Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Psychology, 4th edition. Narrated by Omar Mohsen Ibrahim Fouad. The time now is 8:27 p.m. Today is Monday, June 22nd, 2026. Chapter 7, Cognition, Language, and Intelligence. Chapter Outline and Learning Objectives. What is cognition? LO1, define cognition and explain how it relates to thinking. LO2, demonstrate an understanding of concepts and how they are organized. LO3, differentiate between natural concepts and formal concepts, problem solving and decision making. LO4, explain how trial and error and algorithm. LO4, explain how trial and error and algorithms can be used to solve problems. LO5, explain how heuristics help us solve problems. LO6, describe the process of decision making and how heuristics can lead us astray. The power of language. LO7, define language and give examples of its basic elements. LO8, explain how language influences thought, intelligence. LO9, distinguish among various theories of intelligence. LO10, describe how intelligence is measured and identify the important characteristics of assessment. LO11, define creativity and its associated characteristics. What is cognition? Bleeding brain. December 10th, 1996 was the day a blood vessel in Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor's brain began to bleed. At approximately 7 a.m., Dr. Taylor awoke to a pain behind her left eye, a stabbing sensation she found similar to the brain freeze felt after a hasty gulp of ice cream. It seemed strange for a healthy 37-year-old woman to experience such a terrible headache, but Dr. Taylor was not the type to lounge in bed all day. Pushing through the pain, she got up and climbed onto her cardio glider, but as soon as she began moving her limbs back and forth, a weird out-of-body sensation took hold. I felt as though I was observing myself in motion, as in the playback of a memory. Dr. Taylor writes in her book, My Stroke of Insight. My fingers, as they grasped onto the handrail, looked like primitive claws. According to Taylor, 2006, page 37. The brain scientist. An accomplished neuroanatomist, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor had devoted her career to studying the brains of others. But one winter morning in 1996, she was given the frightening opportunity to observe her own brain in the midst of a meltdown. The pain, meanwhile, kept hammering away at the left side of her head. She stepped off the cardio glider and headed toward the bathroom, but her steps seemed plodding, and maintaining balance demanded intense concentration. Finally, reaching the shower, Dr. Taylor propped herself against the wall and turned on the faucet. But the sound of the water splashing against the tub was like an ear-splitting roar. Her brain was no longer processing sound normally. For the first time that morning, she began to wonder if her brain was in serious trouble, according to Taylor, 2006. What is going on, she thought. What is happening in my brain, according to Taylor 2006, page 41. If anyone was poised to answer these questions, it was Dr. Taylor herself. A devoted neuroanatomist, she spent her days studying neurons at a laboratory affiliated with Harvard Medical School. Waiting in a dreamlike fog, Dr. Taylor managed to shower and put on clothes. Then, just as she began visualizing the journey to work, her right arm felt limp like a dead fish. It was paralyzed. At that moment, she knew, oh my gosh, I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke. Page 44. Then, wow, this is so cool. How many scientists have the opportunity to study their own brain function and mental deterioration from the inside out? Page 44. A dangerous knot. The MRI scan shows a tangled intersection of arteries and veins called an arteriovenous malformation, AVM, the anatomical abnormality that led to Dr. Taylor's stroke. An AVM is essentially a clump of blood vessels that results when there are no capillaries linking arteries to veins. Sometimes the vessels of an AVM bursts under pressure, allowing blood to pool in the brain. This is called a hemorrhagic stroke, according to National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke 2019. Dr. Taylor was indeed having a rare form of stroke caused by a defective linkage between blood vessels in the brain. Having a backstage pass to her own stroke was a once-in-a-lifetime learning opportunity for a neuroanatomist, but it was also a serious condition requiring immediate medical attention. Aware of this urgency, Dr. Taylor took a seat by the phone, racking her brain for ideas of how to get help. The usual strategies, like calling 911 or knocking on a neighbor's door, simply did not cross her mind. As she gazed at the phone keypad, a string of digits materialized in her brain, the phone number of her mother in Indiana. But Dr. Taylor did not want to worry her mom, so she sat and waited, hoping another phone number would come to mind, according to Taylor 2006. Finally, the digits of her work number flickered by. She scrawled them down as fast as she could, but her writing looked like cryptic lines and curves. Fortunately, those lines and curves matched the figure she saw on the phone keypad. Dr. Taylor picked up the phone and dialed, according to Taylor 2006. Her co-worker and friend, Dr. Stephen Vincent, answered immediately, but his words were incomprehensible to Dr. Taylor. Oh my gosh, he sounds like a golden retriever, she thought. Mustering all her mental might, she opened her mouth and said, "This is Jill, I need help." But her own voice sounded like a golden retriever as well, according to Taylor 2006, page 56, 2008. Luckily, Dr. Vincent recognized that the murmurs and cries belonged to his friend Jill, and before long he was driving her to the hospital, according to Taylor 2006. As blood hemorrhaged into Dr. Taylor's brain, she struggled to process sensory information, tap into memories, and use language. As she later reflected, in the course of 4 hours, I watched my brain completely deteriorate in its ability to process all information, according to Taylor 2008, 2 minutes and 5 seconds through 2 minutes and 12 seconds. The bleeding was limiting her capacity for cognition. Cognition, you probably heard the word tossed around in conversation, and perhaps you know it has something to do with thinking. But what exactly do we mean by cognition, and where does it figure in the vast landscape of psychology? Note, unless otherwise stated, quotations attributed to Harry Carson are personal communications. Cognition and thinking. The study of cognition is deeply rooted in the history of psychology. Early psychologists focused on understanding the mysterious workings of the mind, often using introspection, examination of one's own conscious activities in their studies, according to Graver 2019. With the rise of behaviorism in the 1930s, the field broadened, and some psychologists redirected their studies toward the exploration of observable behaviors. Then, in the 1950s, researchers began using new technologies and theoretical approaches to probe the mind. Psychology experienced what has been called a cognitive revolution or cognitive turn, as researchers began to develop new methods, approaches, and frameworks to study mental processes in a strictly empirical fashion, according to Brait ETAL 2020, page 255. Research on thinking and other aspects of cognition has flourished ever since. Connections. In Chapter 1, we described how Wundt used introspection to examine psychological responses to stimuli. Titchener also used introspection to explore the structure and most basic elements of the mind. These early psychologists paved the way for cognitive psychology, the study of mental processes, and cognitive neuroscience, the study of biological activities underlying mental processes. LO1 defined cognition and explained how it relates to thinking. Cognition is the mental activity associated with obtaining, converting, and using knowledge. But how is this different from thinking? Thinking is a specific type of cognition that requires us to go beyond or manipulate information to reach a goal. Thinking involves transforming information to make a decision, reach a solution, or form a belief, according to Farmer and Metlin 2019. This activity is not just in your head. As some scholars point out, thinking may be influenced by an interaction of processes associated with perception, the body, and the surrounding environment, according to Barcelou 2020. To summarize, cognition is a broad term that describes mental activity, and thinking is a subset of cognition. Dr. Taylor was clearly experiencing significant impairments in both cognition and thinking on the morning of her stroke. Connections. In chapters 0 and 1, we discussed critical thinking, which drives the cycle of scientific exploration. The process involves weighing and synthesizing evidence, thinking clearly, rationally, and with an open mind. Here we explore thinking more broadly. The hospital. At Mount Auburn Hospital, Dr. Taylor had a computerized axial tomography CAT scan, which revealed a giant hemorrhage in the left side of her brain. My left hemisphere was swimming in a pool of my blood, and my entire brain was swollen in response to the trauma, she recalls, according to Taylor 2006, page 68. Dr. Taylor was rushed by ambulance to Massachusetts General Hospital, which has a neurological intensive care unit. The following day, Dr. Taylor was told that her mother, who went by the name of Gigi, was on her way. She found the news perplexing, according to Taylor 2006. What on earth was a mother, or who or what was a Gigi? Initially, I didn't understand the significance of Gigi, as I had lost the concept of what a mother was. She writes, page 88. When Gigi arrived, she walked over to her daughter's bed and climbed in alongside her. As Dr. Taylor recalls, she immediately wrapped me up in her arms, and I melted into the familiarity of her snuggle. Page 90. Can you grasp this concept? LO2. Demonstrate an understanding of concepts
and how they are organized. Although the touch of Gigi felt familiar, the concept of her had slipped away, at least temporarily. What exactly is a concept? We can define concepts as mental representations of categories. These categories include objects, situations, and ideas that belong together based on their central features, characteristics. The concept of superhero, for example, includes a variety of recognizable characteristics, such as supernatural powers, bravery, and a strong desire to protect the innocent. Concepts are a central ingredient of cognitive activity, playing an important role in memory, learning, and language, according to Bowman and Zitamova, 2020, Brewitt, ETAL, 2020, and 2019. Without concepts, we would have a hard time communicating and organizing our thoughts. For example, we all know what a cloud is, but if the concept cloud did not exist, we would have to describe many of the characteristics we associate with clouds whenever one comes up in conversation. I see a white mass in the sky. A collection of frozen or liquid water particles floating in the atmosphere. Thanks to our cloud concept, we can simply use the word cloud as shorthand. There is a cloud in the sky. Even if you encounter a cloud that doesn't look typical, for example, a cirrus cloud, which looks more like white streaks than balls of fluff, you still know it's a cloud. Your cloud concept may be slightly different from that of the next person, but it is useful nevertheless. Concepts allow us to organize and synthesize information and to draw conclusions about specific objects, situations, and ideas that we have never encountered before, according to Brewitt, ETAL, 2020, Yee and Thompson, Schill, 2016. Imagine how exhausting thinking and talking would be if we did not have concepts to fall back on. Clouds. You may not know the scientific names of these clouds. Cumulus on the left, alto cumulus in the center, and cirrus on the right. However, you immediately know they are clouds because you have developed a cloud concept, which specifies the defining features of these water and ice formations that float in the sky. Organizing furniture. One way to understand concepts is to consider how they can be organized in hierarchies or rankings. Generally, psychologists use a 3-level concept hierarchy to categorize information. At the top of the hierarchy are subordinate concepts. This is the broadest category encompassing all objects belonging to a concept. Infographic 7.1 shows the superordinate concept of furniture, a broad group that includes everything from couches to nightstands at the top of the hierarchy. If we limit our focus to couches only, we are looking at the mid-level or basic level of the hierarchy. Narrowing our focus further brings us to the subordinate level, which includes specific types or instances of couches, such as a love seat, a lazy boy, or that family couch with crumbs between the cushions. We typically use mid-level category to identify objects. We typically use the mid-level category to identify objects in our everyday experience. That's a nice couch. Most children learn the mid-level concepts first, followed by the subordinate and Most children learn the mid-level concepts first, followed by the superordinate and subordinate concepts, according to Mandler 2008 and Rosh ETAL 1976. Although a child might grasp the meaning of couch, they may not understand furniture, the superordinate level, or chaise lounge, the subordinate level. Children become familiar with concepts like luck and happiness early in life, but it can take many years for them to understand the complexities of these ideas, according to Woolley and Kelly 2020, F. Yang ETAL 2021. Forest bathing. If you were born in Japan, you may be familiar with the concept of Shinrin Yaku, which means to bathe in the relaxing environment of a forest, experiencing all its sensory stimuli, according to Kaiser Permanente 2022, paragraph 2. But this natural concept may not be familiar if you were raised in the United States. Concept formation is shaped by culture and individual experiences. Relearning concept hierarchies was a formidable task for Dr. Taylor because so many of their layers had been washed away by the hemorrhage. With hard work, optimism, and the help of Gigi, she slowly reconstructed concepts as diverse as alphabet letters and tuna salad. Using children's books, Gigi helped her daughter retrain her brain to read, and by putting together puzzles, Dr. Taylor was able to recreate concepts such as right side up and edge, according to Taylor 2006. LO3, differentiate between natural concepts. LO3, differentiate between natural concepts and formal concepts. Logical or personal. Concepts can be divided into two major categories, natural and formal. Natural concepts are defined by general characteristics and are acquired during the course of our daily lives, according to Rosh 1973, Yi and Thompson Schill 2016. Examples we have already discussed include furniture and superhero. Like all natural concepts, these are mental representations of categories formed through each person's unique experience and culture. Your concept of superhero, for example, is likely based on stories you've heard, books you've read, and movies you've seen. There are no universal or fixed rules for what constitutes a superhero, as they are constantly changing and are inextricably linked to their contexts, according to Yi and Thompson Schill 2016, page 1015. Identifying objects that fall into natural concept categories is difficult because their boundaries are imprecise and hard to define. They don't have rigid rules or identification, according to Hampton 1998. Formal concepts, on the other hand, are based on rigid and illogical rules or features of a concept. When children learn that 5 is an odd number because, like all other odd numbers, it cannot be divided evenly by 2 without a remainder, they are developing a simple formal concept. An object, idea, or situation must explicitly adhere to strict criteria in order to meet the definition of a particular formal concept. Science uses formal concepts to develop laws, theorems, and rules. In Chapter 1, we introduced operational definitions, which specify the precise manner in which variables are defined and measured. Creating operational definitions for formal concepts is relatively straightforward because they are already defined by rigid and logical rules. Natural concepts are more challenging as experts do not always agree on how to define or measure them. Sometimes, psychologists create operational definitions with the help of prototypes, according to Luo et al. 2022. Prototypes, the best examples. Prototypes are the ideal or most representative examples of natural concepts, according to Mervis and Roche, 1981. A prototype is the image or definition that quickly comes to mind when you consider a concept. If asked to give an example of a fruit, you would most likely say apple or orange, and not rambutan, unless you happen to be from Indonesia, where this sweet fruit is eaten regularly. Infographic 7.1 presents a list of fruits organized by the most frequently suggested prototype, orange, to the least frequently suggested prototype, olive, among a group of Infographic 7.1 presents a list of fruits organized from the most frequently suggested prototype, orange, to the least frequently suggested prototype, olive, among a group of U.S. college students, according to Roche and Mervis, 1975. Unfamiliar fruits. If we asked you to clarify a durian on top or a rambutan on the bottom, you might pause before saying the word fruit. This is because durians and rambutans do not closely resemble our typical fruit prototypes, apples and oranges. If we showed you a peach, however, your response might be faster because peaches are more similar to apples and oranges. Prototypes help us identify objects and ideas as members of a concept. This process is much easier when the items presented closely resemble our prototypes. If shown an image of a papaya, many people in the United States would take longer to identify it as belonging to the fruit If shown an image of a papaya, many people in the United States would take longer to identify it as belonging to the fruit category than if they were shown an image of a peach, which is more similar to the common prototypes of apples and oranges. It would likely take them even longer to identify a durian or rambutan, fruits that are relatively unusual in our part of the world. Now let's consider the concept of hero, scaling back from superheroes. The subject of much research over the years, the natural concept of hero can be defined by its most prototypical features, including bravery, moral integrity, conviction, self-sacrifice, honesty, altruism, and determination, according to Kinsella et al. 2015. Infographic 7.1 Concepts and Prototypes. Concepts are used to organize information in a manner that helps us understand things, even when we are Concepts are used to organize information in a manner that helps us understand things, even when we are encountering them for the first time. Formal concepts like circle allow us to categorize objects and ideas in a very precise way. Something either meets the criteria to be included in that category or it doesn't. Natural concepts develop as a result of our everyday encounters and vary according to our culture and individual experiences. We tend to use prototypes, ideal representations with features we associate most with a category to identify natural concepts. Formal, natural. A formal concept, defined by rigid, precise rules. A circle is a two-dimensional shape in which all points are the same distance from its center. Natural concept, defined by general characteristics established through everyday encounters. A couch is a large piece of furniture used for sitting. Concepts can be organized into hierarchies. Subordinate concepts can be organized into hierarchies. Superordinate level. Furniture, couch, bed. Mid-level, basic, subordinate level. Did you think of this? Maybe not. But if you're from India, the traditional charpe Did you think of this? Maybe not. But if you're from India, the traditional charpe may be your prototype. The first image that comes to mind when someone says bed. What comes to mind when you think of the concept fruit? Researchers studying the development of categories organized a group of items from the most prototypical to the least prototypical. According to Roche and Mervis, 1975, how long would it take you to think of an olive? Most prototypical. Orange, apple, banana, strawberry, pineapple, lemon, date, coconut, tomato, olive. Least prototypical. Extended description for concepts and prototypes. Put your heads together. Research suggests that we form prototypes of people with certain illnesses, according to Julian 2019. For example, we think of a person with type 2 diabetes. Certain characteristics may automatically come to mind. In your group, discuss A, how patient prototypes might affect individuals who have medical conditions, and B, how these prototypes could influence the behavior of healthcare providers. We now know that the brain organizes information into meaningful categories or concepts. But how is that information represented in our heads, especially for concepts related to people, places, and things that aren't present? With the help of mental imagery, we can imagine how they look, sound, smell, taste, and feel. Picture this. Where's your phone right now? Did a picture of your beloved mobile device suddenly materialize in your mind's eye? If so, you have just created a mental image. Whether you're wondering where your phone is or daydreaming about celebrities, your brain is constantly whipping up vivid pictures. This cognitive activity often involves manipulating objects in 3 dimensions. Let's consider what happens when we first examine a new object. Typically, we hold the object in our hands, assuming it's not too heavy, and rotate it to get a better view. If the object is too large to hold, we often walk around it to see how it looks from various angles. Do we mentally have this way as well? Do we mentally behave this way as well? To answer this question, researchers have spent a great deal of time studying mental imagery and specifically mental rotation tasks. In one of the earliest studies, On this topic, researchers had 8 participants looking at 1,600 pairs of object drawings, like those displayed in Figure 7.1, and then asked them to mentally rotate one of the objects in the pair to determine if they were identical. The amount of time it took participants to rotate the object, their reaction time, depended on the degree of difference between the orientations of the 2 objects. The greater the rotation, the longer it took participants to decide if the objects were identical, according to Shepard and Metzler, 1971. In the past 50 years, research has indicated that cognitive processes involved with mental rotation are analogous to rotating actual objects physically. According to Steiff, ETAL 2018, page 1161. In fact, imagery and perception appear to share many of the same neural mechanisms, according to Ganis, ETAL 2004, and Lissman, 2015. Neurons often display similar patterns of activity when a person imagines something or sees it in real life, according to Lissman, 2015. Extended description for Figure 7.1, Manipulating Mental Images. Figure 7.1, Manipulating Mental Images. Can you tell which object pair is congruent? In order to determine this, you must hold images of these figures in your mind and mentally manipulate them. The answer appears below. Generally speaking, males tend to outperform females in mental rotation tasks, and this disparity may become apparent as early as infancy. Information from Johnson and Moore, 2020. The ability to mentally rotate objects can be extremely useful. Remember the last time you tried to fit a large piece of furniture through a doorway or cram a dirty bowl into an overcrowded dishwasher. In each case, you probably relied on some type of mental rotation. In planning how to maneuver these objects, teachers use mental rotation activities to help students understand 3-dimensional structures, according to Chamberlain, ETAL 2019, and Steiff, ETAL 2018. In organic chemistry, for example, students learn by manipulating concrete and virtual models of molecules. This makes it possible to internalize a mental model of these transformations, which helps them use more accurate mental rotation when the models are not physically present, according to Stull and Haggerty, 2016, page 521. These types of hands-on activities are also good for younger children who generally benefit more from in-person as opposed to online learning. These types of hands-on activities are also good for younger children who generally benefit from in-person as opposed to online learning, according to Papas, 2020. For an additional example of research on mental imagery, refer to Figure 7.2 and take note. Imagery is not always visual. Have you ever imagined the smell of freshly baked banana bread? Or perhaps you have heard a song in your head. We use all types of sensory experiences to construct imagery in our minds. Figure 7.2, Scanning Mental Images. In a study on mental imagery, participants were instructed to study a map of a small fictional island. They closed their eyes and imagined the map, first picturing one object, the hut, and then scanning across their mental image until they arrived at a second object, the rock. As with the scanning of real objects, it took longer to find objects on a mental image when they are far apart. Information from Kosselin, ETAL, 1978. Answer A. Show what you know. Question number 1. Blank is the mental activity associated with obtaining, converting, and using knowledge. The answer is cognition. Cognition is the mental activity associated with obtaining, converting, and using knowledge. Question number 2. If you were to define the blank of hero, you might include characteristics such as bravery, moral integrity, self-sacrifice, honesty, and determination. Is the answer A, cognition, B, concept, C, hierarchy, or D, mental imagery? The answer is B, concept. If you were to define the concept of hero, you might include characteristics such as bravery, moral integrity, self-sacrifice, honesty, and determination. Question number 3. Your instructor explains that the pitch of a sound is defined by the frequency of the sound wave. They are describing a blank which is based on rigid rules or features. Is the answer A, prototype, B, natural concept, C, formal concept, or D, cognition? The answer is C, formal concept. Your instructor explains that the pitch of a sound is defined by the frequency of the sound wave. They are describing a formal concept which is based on rigid rules or features. Problem solving and decision making. The big dilemma. On day 3 at the hospital, a team of doctors arrived at Dr. Taylor's bedside to discuss the possibility of performing surgery. One of the doctors informed Dr. Taylor that there was a blood clot as big as a golf ball on the left side of her brain. Both the clot and the remainder of the blood vessel malformation needed to be extracted. Otherwise, she risked having another stroke, according to Taylor 2006. But brain surgery carries its own set of risks. Dr. Taylor had a very big problem on her hands and a very important decision to make. Would she undergo the operation? What's the problem? Have you ever considered the many problems you encounter and solve every day? Problems crop up when something gets in the way of a goal, like a computer crashing when you are racing to a finishing. Problems crop up when something gets in the way of a goal, like a computer crashing when you are racing to finish a project. They range from mundane, the vending machine stole my dollar, to potentially overwhelming, I have a life-threatening They range from mundane, the vending machine stole my dollar, to potentially overwhelming, I have a life-threatening brain bleed. Problem solving refers to the variety of approaches we can use to achieve our goals. One early model suggests that problem solving proceeds from an initial state, the situation at the start of a problem, to a goal state, the situation when the problem is solved, according to Farmer and Matlin 2019 and Newell et al. 1958. How might this model apply to Dr. Taylor? Her initial state included a massive blood clot and a troublesome clump of vessels in her left hemisphere. The goal state was maximizing her health, both physically and cognitively. A crucial component of problem solving is recognizing obstacles that block the paths to a solution, according to Farmer and Matlin 2019. Think about a problem you want to solve and identify the initial state, the goal state, and the obstacles in your way. If your initial state is unfinished homework and your goal state is timely completion, the obstacles might include competing responsibilities. If your initial state is unfinished homework and your goal state is timely completion, the obstacles might include competing responsibilities like having to go to work or something more internal like sleepiness. How do we solve it? The first step in problem solving is understanding the problem. Infographic 7.2. If you can't identify or label a problem, then solving it is going to be difficult. Once you grasp the problem, you must choose one of many available approaches or strategies to tackle it. Which strategy you settle on and the speed, accuracy, and success of your solution will depend on many factors, including your reservoir of knowledge and the amount of time you spend assessing the problem. According to Erickson 2003 and Goldstein 2019. Let's explore some strategies. LO4, explain how trial and error and algorithms can be used to solve problems. Trial and error. One common approach to problem solving is trial and error, the process of finding a solution through a series of attempts. Mistakes are likely, but you can simply eliminate options that don't work. Let's say you have a huge set of keys, but you don't know which one, if any, fits the lock you are trying to open. Using trial and error, you would try the keys one by one until you find the right one, assuming the correct key is on the ring. But this approach is only useful in certain circumstances and should be avoided when the stakes are high. Imagine if Dr. Taylor's physicians had used trial and error to choose the procedure she needed. Let's try this surgery first. If it doesn't work, we'll try a different one next week, and then another the following week. Trial and error is also not recommended for problems with too many possible solutions. If you have 50 keys, you probably don't want to spend your time trying every single one of them. Besides, there is no guarantee you will arrive at a solution. 64,000 combos. Forgot your lock combination? Trying to figure it out by trial and error is not an effective strategy, as there are 64,000 possible solutions. Better buy a new lock. Algorithms. If you're looking for a problem-solving approach that is more of a sure thing, an algorithm is probably your best bet. Algorithms. Use formulas or sets of rules to solve problems. Unlike trial and error, algorithms ensure a solution as long as you choose the right one and follow all its steps. Have you ever assembled furniture using a manual, followed the instructions on a food package, or installed software with a series of drags and clicks? If so, you were using an algorithm. Sometimes these steps of an algorithm are not written. You just have to remember them. Suppose you need to calculate a 20% tip. Here's an algorithm that can help. Take the total amount of your bill, move the decimal to the left one space, and multiply by 2. Voila. You've just calculated 20% of the bill. LO5, explain how heuristics help us solve problems. Heuristics. When it comes to solving everyday problems, algorithms may be impractical, time-consuming, or simply unavailable. In these cases, we may turn to heuristics. A heuristic is a problem-solving shortcut that employs a rule of thumb, guideline, or strategy to finding a solution. These heuristics do not always work, but they help us identify and evaluate possible solutions to our problems. Suppose you find yourself in the midst of a thunderstorm. To determine how far you are from lightning, a good rule of thumb is to count the number of seconds between the burst of lightning and the sound of thunder. Then divide by 5. This will tell you the approximate number of miles between you and the lightning bolt, according to
Palermo, 2013. But unlike algorithms, which use formulas and sets of rules, there is no guarantee a heuristic will yield a correct solution. The advantage of heuristics is that they help shrink the number of possible solutions to a size that is manageable. Once that is accomplished, trial and error may be useful for identifying the best solution. Suppose a hacker is trying to break into an online bank account with Wells Fargo. They use a heuristic that combines a commonly used password, 123456, password football, and something from the domain itself, WF, producing passwords such as 123456 WF, password WF, and football WF. From there, the hacker uses trial and error to break into the account. Infographic 7.2, problem solving. When you're trying to solve a problem, it helps to identify an initial state and a goal state according to Newell et al. 1958. The strategy you chose and your ability to develop a solution will depend on many factors, including your reservoir of knowledge and the amount of time you spend assessing the problem, according to Erickson 2003 and Goldstein 2019. Sometimes obstacles derive from the problems itself. For example, you must register for classes by a certain date. Other times, the barriers exist in your mind, preventing you from identifying different approaches. Understanding the problem, identify initial state. What do you know about the problem situation? What is the goal state? Problem, I need to register for classes, but I don't know what to take. My major has requirements. Not every class is offered this semester. Some classes have prerequisites. Obstacles. Choose an approach, trial and error. Try every option. Algorithms follow step-by-step procedure to guaranteed solution. Follow step-by-step procedure to guaranteed solution. Heuristics use general strategies that provide shortcuts. Employ algorithm to narrow down options. Using catalog, find courses needed for major. Eliminate classes with prerequisites I don't have. Check course offerings online. Register for available classes. Evaluate. Problem solved. If not, try again. No, I can't take biology. It's only offered at 4:30 p.m. when I have to be at work. Barriers to problem solving. Being stuck in a certain way of thinking about a problem can limit what we see as available approaches. For example, our student registering for classes may assume that classes must be in person with an instructor on campus. This assumption prevents the student from investigating more flexible online classes, hybrid classes, or classes that could be transferred from another college. Sticking with our usual solution strategies is called a mental set. To see if you can overcome your mental set, try solving this problem. Without lifting your pencil, can you connect all 9 dots using only 4 straight lines and without crossing any dots more than once? Solution in figure 7.3 on the next page. Functional fixedness is another barrier in which we can only imagine using familiar objects in their usual way. Say you need to tie 2 ropes together, but you can't reach them both at the same time. The only tool you have is a small shovel. Will functional fixedness keep you from solving this problem? Solution in figure 7.3. Extended description from problem. Extended description for problem solving. Insight. Problems can also be solved through insight, an understanding that occurs in a sudden stroke of clarity, that oh so satisfying aha or eureka moment. Insight can stem from experience solving previous problems, or it can be totally new. Often insights comes as a pleasant surprise, but we are not aware of the mental work we did to achieve it. According to Labor Warren 2022 and Stick ETAL 2021, many of the products and services you use every day were conceived in a sudden flash of insight by a scientist or entrepreneur. Are you familiar with the furniture company IKEA? The founder of IKEA reportedly got his idea for selling flat-packed furniture while watching one of his employees take the legs off a table so it could be moved more easily, according to Wilson 2018. Were it not for this light bulb moment, IKEA might not be the multi-billion-dollar company it is today. I Want a Banana. In a classic study, Gestalt psychologist Wolfgang Kohler provided chimpanzees with some of outreach bananas and materials that could potentially be used to fetch them. Resourceful chimps, they were building towers of crates and poking at the fruit with sticks, rather than using trial and error to solve the problem. They seemed to rely on intelligence and insight. Research from Kohler, 1925. Sometimes insight happens so suddenly that we find ourselves wondering, why did it take me so long to figure that out? The answer seems so obvious now. Without our conscious awareness, the mind is busy reorganizing the way the problem is represented, and this allows us suddenly and inexplicably to see things in a new light, according to C.O. and Ormerod, 2009. A unique pattern of neural activity appears to accompany insight as opposed to problem solving without the aha experience, according to Becker ETAL 2020b. Immediately preceding a moment of insight, we see increased activation in the frontal and temporal lobes, according to Cunios and Beeman 2009. Flashes of insight are also accompanied by activity in dopamine reward networks beneath the cortex, which might help explain why these experiences are so satisfying, according to Tick ETAL 2018. When faced with a tricky problem, sometimes the best thing to do is step away and allow your brain to work behind the scenes. The solution may pop into your head unexpectedly, according to C.O. and Ormerod 2009. Evidence also suggests that fatigue, moderate alcohol consumption, and letting go of complex problem-solving approaches can potentially increase insight problem-solving, according to DeCaro ETAL 2016. Extended description for Figure 7.3a, solution to the dot problem in Infographic 7.2b, solution to the rope problem in Infographic 7.2. Figure 7.3, solution to Infographic 7.2a, the dot problem. Did your mental set cause you to assume the square implied boundaries? Or perhaps you had a stroke of insight and realized that lines could be drawn extending outside the square. B, the two-rope problem. Using a shovel to create a pendulum will allow you to swing the second rope when it swings near you. You can grab it and hold both ropes at the same time. People get stuck on this problem because they can't think of alternative ways to use the shovel. Functional fixedness. We've hit a roadblock. With the capacity for insight, humans can be masterful problem solvers. Still, barriers do arise. Infographic 7.2. One such barrier is functional fixedness, which occurs when we can only imagine using familiar objects in their usual way. This fixation can stop us from finding new creative uses for objects. Suppose the hem of your pants catches on something and tears. A roll of tape and a stapler are on your desk, and both could be used to fix your wardrobe malfunction. But because your functional fixedness, you only view these items in their usual capacities. Functional fixedness may be less apparent when people flip into survival mode. When the mind is focused on meeting basic needs, finding food, and avoiding predators in unfamiliar territory, it may be easier to think outside the box and find unconventional uses for things in the environment, according to Cronison et al. 2021. Children have less trouble with functional fixedness because they have not become accustomed to using common objects in specified ways, according to German and DeFater 2000. Yet the more they observe others using objects, the less likely they are to be innovative. Connections. In the Sensation and Perception chapter, we describe perceptual set, which is the tendency to perceive stimuli in a specific manner based on past experiences and expectations. With functional fixedness, we can only imagine using objects in their usual way. Think outside the box. Who knew that money can be hidden in an empty lip balm tube? And that tennis balls can shield a floor from scratches? Sometimes it's hard to imagine using things for unconventional purposes. Our resistance to using familiar objects in new ways is known as functional fixedness, and it can get in the way of problem solving. Mental sets are another barrier to problem solving. People tend to fall back on strategies they have always used, even if they don't work so well. For example, students often start their first semester of college believing they can succeed in their courses using strategies that worked in high school. But these old methods are often incompatible with the requirements and expectations of college. High school students might get away with finishing assignments during class, but college students, no way. Mental sets can prevent us from seeing other solutions, like starting on assignments as soon as they are given. Emotional barriers can also get in the way of problem solving. If you are trying to figure out how to fix a dripping faucet and someone is peering over your shoulder saying, "Hurry up, what's taking you so long?" you may feel rushed, anxious, and annoyed. These negative emotions affect your ability to think clearly and creatively. Positive emotions, on the other hand, are thought to promote a flexible way of thinking, one that enables quick shifts in attention and strategy in response to changing conditions. ISEN 2008. Keep this in mind next time you help someone solve a problem. Decisions. Under the knife, with the help of her mother's gentle coaxing, Dr. Taylor made the decision to go through with surgery. On the afternoon of December 27, 1996, she awoke in the recovery room with the left side of her head shaved, clean, and a 9-inch wound in the shape of a horseshoe, according to Taylor 2006. Dr. Taylor had survived the operation, and she didn't feel drained and confused. As you might expect, upon awakening, I realized that I felt different now. There was brightness in my spirit again, and I felt happy. Page 112. Brightness in her spirit. Dr. Taylor poses with her mother Gigi, who played an instrument role. Dr. Taylor poses with her mother Gigi, who played an instrumental role in the recovery process. Say something, demanded Gigi as she approached her daughter beside. Say something, demanded Gigi as she approached her daughter's bedside, according to Taylor 2006, page 113. Gigi needed to know that her daughter could still use language. Surgeons had just spent hours poking around her left hemisphere, home to the language processing regions of Broca's and Wernicke's areas. Surgeons had just spent hours poking around her left hemisphere, home to the language processing regions of Broca's and Wernicke's areas. These surgeons might have inadvertently damaged one of these key regions, compromising her ability to understand or produce words. Dr. Taylor opened her mouth and responded, and she and Gigi both became teary-eyed. The operation appeared to have gone well. Dr. Taylor, it seemed, had made the right decision, according to Taylor 2006. LO6 described the process of decision-making and how heuristics can lead us astray. If problem-solving refers to the variety of approaches you can use to achieve a goal, how is it different from decision-making? Decision-making is the cognitive process of choosing from these approaches. Thus, problem-solving and decision-making can occur together. Often, decision-making involves predicting the future. What is the likelihood that event A will occur under these circumstances? How about event B? Some situations lend themselves to accurate guesses. If the Weather Channel predicts a 99% chance of thunderstorms today, you can probably assume it's going to rain. Better bring your umbrella. Other times, predicting the future is like rolling dice. You have almost no way of knowing the outcome. Suppose you're looking for a used car on Carvana with no prior knowledge of the cars or their owners, apart from the information they have chosen to post and a few clues you have gathered from your own research. All you can do is hope that you don't end up with a lemon, a car with many problems. Choices that hinge on unknowns can be risky, and sometimes we make bad decisions. Why do we make bad decisions? Predicting the future can be easier with heuristics, but these problem-solving shortcuts can also lead us astray. Israeli-American psychologist Daniel Kahneman and Israeli psychologist Amos Tversky, 1937 through 1996, were among the first to systematically research the errors caused by heuristics. They found that people tend to ignore important information while using these shortcuts. Kahneman and Tversky, 1996. This is particularly true for the availability heuristic and the representativeness heuristic. The availability heuristic. With the availability heuristic, we predict the probability of something happening in the future based on how easily we can recall a similar type of event from the past. The availability heuristic is essentially a decision-making strategy that relies on memory. If we can easily recall a certain event, then we tend to base our decisions on the assumption that it can happen again. Many factors make an event more available for recall, including its recency, frequency, familiarity, and vividness. Let's take a look at each of these qualities. Connections. In the memory chapter, we describe the recency effect, the tendency to remember items more accurately when they appear at the end of a list or series. Here we discuss the tendency to overestimate the probability of an event occurring if a similar event has occurred recently. Imagine you have just seen a series of news reports about a major airplane crash. Every time you look at the news, you learn new details about this. Every time you look at the news, you learn new details about the tragedy. Because of the recency of the reports, you may be vulnerable to the availability heuristic and decide that flying is a dangerous form of travel. Yet the odds of dying in a plane crash are extremely low, lower than losing your life in a car, motorcycle, or bicycle accident. In fact, you are more likely to die from a dog attack than an airplane accident, according to National Safety Council, ND. But the recency of the plane crash and the resulting media storm makes it easier to recall. Thus, you are more inclined to overestimate the likelihood of it happening again, and perhaps decide that driving is safer. The frequency of an event also makes it more available for recall. Suppose you work at the campus bookstore and you need to order software that is compatible with students' computers. Before deciding what to buy, you need to figure out the rough proportion of students using Macs and PCs. You may base your estimate on the number of students you have seen using these computers in the halls, classrooms, and library. The frequency of occurrence influences your estimate. If you only focus on the art department, you will probably see a higher representation of Macs. Macs tend to be popular among art students. Limiting your observations to this department or any single department makes for a sample that is not representative of the entire college. The availability heuristic can only lead you to the correct decision if you consider the right information. Now consider the familiarity of an event. If you and your friends are all avid PC users, you may overestimate the extent to which others use PCs. The more familiar you are with a situation, the more likely you will predict a similar occurrence in the future and base your decisions on this faulty estimate. Finally, the vividness of an event can make it more available for recall. Try to conjure up an image of someone winning big at a casino. The prize winner jumps joyfully in the air, hollering at the top of their lungs, with onlookers clapping in approval. This type of dramatic display never occurs when people lose money. The details of a losing bet would be far more difficult to recall because the winning image is more vivid. We are more likely to recall it and thus overestimate the likelihood of a win occurring in our own lives, and perhaps decide to spend money at the casino. Memorable imagery leads us to believe that such wins happen all the time, when in fact they are very rare. If an event has made a striking impression, you will be more likely to overestimate the probability of it happening again, according to Tversky and Kahneman, 1982. Back when I was a kid, I never wore a bicycle helmet when I was growing up, and I turned out okay. People often use this argument to defend certain parenting behaviors, but it is critically flawed. As psychologist Justin Coulson pointed out in the New York Times, personal memories are readily available in our minds, so we may over-rely on them when making decisions. Sometimes this means ignoring well-substantiated scientific evidence. According to Coulson, 2018, paragraph 18, this cognitive error is known as the availability heuristic.
The representativeness heuristic. Often we make decisions based on our evaluation of a situation or person. With the representativeness heuristic, we make quick, effortless judgment about how closely a person or situation fits our preconceived prototype. Lerner, ETAL 2015, Shaw and Oppenheimer 2008. As mentioned earlier, a prototype is the ideal or most representative example of a natural concept. Let's examine how the representativeness heuristic works in practice. Peter is a middle-aged man. He is conservative, an eloquent speaker, thoughtful, and well-read. He lives alone in an apartment in the city. Is Peter a truck driver or a poet? Using the representativeness heuristic, most people would decide that Peter is a poet because his description better matches their prototype of a poet. But this approach fails to consider the base rate or prevalence of these occupations. There are far more truck drivers than poets, suggesting that Peter is more likely a truck driver. The representativeness heuristic can be useful for decision making, but not when our prototypes ignore base rates and draw on simplistic stereotypes. As the social psychology chapter explains, stereotypes are the conclusions or inferences we make about people who are different from us based on their group membership. As the social psychology chapter explains, stereotypes are the conclusions or inferences we make about people who are different from us based on their group membership. Confirmation bias. We can also miss important information through the confirmation bias when we unintentionally look for evidence that upholds our beliefs and overlook or discount evidence that runs counter to them. For example, suppose you've tried vaping and you really like it, so you look online to research its health effects. One of these sites you come across claims that vaping is relatively safe, and you notice friends on social media are saying it's not as bad as smoking cigarettes. Focusing on this information and ignoring all evidence that might not be compatible with it, you decide to continue using e-cigarettes. What you fail to recognize is that highly regarded scientific sources are saying that vaping carries significant health risks, including fatal lung disease, according to Christiani 2020, Gaia, ETAL 2022. Because of the confirmation bias, we tend to focus on information that supports desired outcomes. According to Dobbs, ETAL 2020, Kristen and Winstill 2007, and Scherer, ETAL 2012. Confirmation bias is one of the reasons we are vulnerable to misinformation spread through the internet, according to Sigder, ETAL 2020. Nothing to do with climate change. California's 2020 wildfire season was the worst on record, according to Krishna Kumar and Cannon 2020. Scientists say the problem is linked to rising temperatures. Climate change plays an undeniable role in the unprecedented wildfires of recent years, according to Miller, ETAL 2020, paragraph 4. Union of Concerned Scientists, 2020. Yet many people continue to believe that these two phenomena are unrelated, and they consume media that reinforces their view. This is an example of confirmation bias. We tend to look for information that supports our beliefs and overlook information that contradicts them. Hindsight bias. The hindsight bias, or I knew it all along feeling, leads us to believe that we could have predicted the outcome of an event. It may seem obvious in retrospect, but that doesn't mean we could have foreseen it. Examples of hindsight bias abound in everyday life. Suppose your instructor returns an exam and you are surprised to learn that you got a certain question wrong. Now that you're staring at the correct answer, it seems so obvious. But if you really knew it all along, why did you give the wrong answer? According to Tower, 2009. Even practicing physicians fall victim to hindsight bias. When doctors hear the details of an autopsy and learn about the cause of death, they often believe they could have easily predicted it, according to Arcase, 2013. In these scenarios, hindsight bias can get in the way of learning and decision making. How do you learn from your mistakes if you cannot identify gaps in your knowledge, according to Arcus 2013 and Tower 2009? The problem with the problem. We have spent a great deal of time discussing factors that impede the decision maker, but in many situations, some aspect of the problem is to blame. The framing effect demonstrates how the presentation or context of a problem can influence our decision making, often in ways beyond our awareness. Consider the following study. Researchers instructed participants to imagine they had purchased a $10 ticket to attend a show, but lost their ticket on the way to the theater. Each participant was then asked whether they would be willing to pay $10 for another ticket. Only 46% of participants indicated that they would spend another $10 for a new ticket. Participants were instructed to imagine another situation. This time they planned to buy a $10 ticket to attend a show, but once they got in the ticket line, they suddenly realized they had lost one of their $10 bills. Faced with this second scenario, 88% of the participants were willing to fork over the $10. In each case, the participants considered the idea of spending an additional and unexpected $10, but they tended to make different decisions. These circumstances framing these hypothetical scenarios influenced the decisions made, even though the outcomes would have been identical. A net loss of $10. Kahneman and Tversky, 1984, Tversky and Kahneman, 1981. The framing effect also applies to wording. One study found that people are more likely to prefer ground beef if it is described as 80% lean as opposed to 20% fat. Although 80% lean and 20% fat describe the exact same product, these phrases evoke very different responses. Johnson, 1987. Another study demonstrated how the wording of a question can influence people's descriptions of themselves. Researchers prompted college students to describe themselves using one of two questions. Please take 5 minutes and write what you think about yourself, or please take 5 minutes and write what you feel about yourself. Please take 5 minutes and write what you think about yourself, or please take 5 minutes and write what you feel about yourself. The group assigned to the feel condition evaluated themselves in a more negative way than the group assigned to the think condition. This may be because those in the feel condition were focusing on emotions, and the English language has more words to describe negative emotions than positive emotions, according to Holt Graves, 2015. Connections. In Chapter 1, we presented the survey method, a form of descriptive research that relies on questionnaires and interviews. Here we see that the wording of questions can influence the way people respond. Jill Bolte Taylor's story has helped us understand how quickly cognitive functions can deteriorate, but not all changes in cognition and behavior stem from catastrophic events like strokes. Brain injuries may also occur in small increments, accumulating over time. Imagine you spent 21 years playing a game that required slamming your body against 200 to 300 pound men. How would the rapid changes in speed and direction and the constant banging of your skull affect the delicate brain inside? Football Hall of Famer Harry Carson is here to tell you. Show what you know. Question number 1. It's the first day of the semester, but you forgot to write down where your psychology class is being held. You decide to stick your head in a random number of rooms until you see the assigned psychology textbook on someone's desk. This problem-solving approach is called A. Functional fixedness, B. An algorithm, C. Trial and error, or D. Heuristics. The answer is C. Trial and error. It's the first day of the semester, but you forgot to write down where your psychology class is being held. You decide to stick your head in a random number of classrooms until you see the assigned psychology textbook on someone's desk. This problem-solving approach is called trial and error. Question number 2. A blank is a problem-solving approach that employs a rule of thumb.
The answer is heuristic. A heuristic is a problem-solving approach that employs a rule of thumb. Question number 3. We often predict the probability of an event happening in the future based on how easily we can recall a similar type of event from the past. This is known as the A. Framing effect, B. Confirmation bias, C. Representativeness heuristic, or D. Availability heuristic. The answer is D. Availability heuristic. We often predict the probability of an event happening in the future based on how easily we can recall a similar type of event from the past. This is known as the availability heuristic. Question number 4. A good friend is terrified of flying. How would you use your knowledge of heuristics to make your friend feel less afraid? Answers will vary. A heuristic uses a rule of thumb, a broad application of a strategy to solve a problem, but it can also be used to help predict the probability of an event occurring. However, heuristics can lead us astray in our assessment of situations or predictions of outcomes. In the current example, you can present information to your friend that indicates flying is the safest form of travel, but you can also describe how the availability heuristic might lead your friend to believe that air travel is not safe. The vividness of an airplane crashes can influence your friend's recall. Even though they are rare events, your friend is likely to overestimate the probability of them happening again due to the ease with which your friend recalls similar events. Highly detailed media reports of an airplane crash are likely to linger in your friend's memory.
Power of language. The power of language. I saw stars. Harry Carson was 14 years old when he stepped onto the football field. It was August in Florence, South Carolina. The air was warm, moist, and steeped in the scent of freshly cut grass. Wearing 20 pounds of football equipment was uncomfortable, but Harry felt proud having it on, especially the imposing shoulder pads and helmet, according to Carson 2011. During their first practice at Wilson High School, the coaches assigned the players to a man-on-man blocking drill. Young Harry was pitted against Bubblegum, a bigger, more experienced player. He must have blocked me 3 or 4 times, and with each block, I felt like a rag doll being chewed up by a pit bull. Harry recalls in his memoir, Captain for Life, according to Carson 2011, page 12. Colliding with Bubblegum was not only painful, it jarred Harry's brain, causing immediate changes in perception. I was unconscious, Harry recalls, but I saw little stars twinkling before my eyes. Like most players of his time, Harry didn't realize that seeing stars or momentarily blacking out was a sign of concussion, a brain injury that is not fatal but can have life-changing consequences. After playing football in high school, Harry went on to become a star lineman and team captain at South Carolina State. Then he achieved what many children in the United States only dream about. He was drafted into the National Football League, NFL, during his 13-year career with the New York Giants. Harry established himself as one of the greatest middle linebackers in the history of professional football. Eventually, he was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but becoming a football legend came at a price. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. In 2005, many years after Harry began raising awareness about sports-related brain injuries, a groundbreaking scientific report came out in the journal Neurosurgery. The study, led by pathologist Dr. Bennett Omalu, detailed the extensive brain damage of deceased NFL player Mike Webster. According to Omalu ETAL 2005, it was the first time a retired pro football player had been diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a neurodegenerative disease caused by repeated head trauma. Since then, researchers have studied the brains of many more football players. An analysis led by neuropathologist Dr. Ann McKee
found evidence of CTE in 110 out of 111, or 99% of the NFL players studied. According to Mes ETAL 2017. Connections. In the memory chapter, we describe the stages and symptoms of CTE and its impact on memory. Here we explore the history that led to the discovery of this neurodegenerative disease and its effect on cognition. Extreme case of CTE. Dr. Ann McKee on the left presents images of the late NFL player Aaron Hernandez on the right. The advanced case of CTE that can be observed in Hernandez's brain is something we've never seen in our 468 brains, except for individuals very much older, noted McKee, director of Boston University's Chronic Traumatic Encephalopathy Center. According to Barlow 2017, paragraph 2, Hernandez was only 27 when he died by suicide in prison. Before his death, he was serving time for one murder and had been accused and acquitted of 2 additional murders, according to Barlow 2017. Did his tragic behaviors result from the cumulative brain damage he sustained as a football player? One of the telltale signs of CTE is abnormal accumulation of tau, a protein also implicated in Alzheimer's disease, according to Butler ETAL 2022. The symptoms of CTE may include anxiety, depression, explosive anger, suicidal tendencies, and a host of cognitive problems, according to Fesharaki Zadeh 2019, McKee ETAL 2013, and Mes ETAL 2017. Advanced cases have been associated with severe memory loss with dementia, according to McKee ETAL 2013, page 59. The discovery of CTE in professional football players came as no surprise to Harry Carson. In fact, he is relatively confident he has CTE as well. I don't really worry about it, because I think that with the information that has already been presented, we all probably have it. The damage Harry sustained cannot be undone, but he doesn't seem bitter or hardened. Instead, he focuses on managing his life in a positive way, eating healthy foods, exercising, and educating others about sports-related brain injuries. See the words. When Harry gets a headache, it often starts on the left side. According to Kirk and Carson 2013, perhaps it's no coincidence that his pain originates in the brain hemisphere where language processing occurs. As you may recall, Harry periodically struggled with media interviews, taking extra time to digest journalists' questions and articulate his responses. These language roadblocks continued popping up when Harry left the NFL and began a career as a sports commentator. Once football was over, I went into broadcasting, he says, and that was something that I failed at horribly because I would lose my train of thought live on the air. There are still times that Harry has difficulty expressing thoughts, but he has developed a cognitive strategy for dealing with it. Sometimes when I am trying to make the points that I want to make, I have to visualize each word that I want to use in my brain before I allow it to leave my lips. Let's get down to basics. Until something goes wrong, it's easy to take language for granted. Words are so much a part of our daily routines that it's difficult to imagine life without them. How would we conduct Google searches, rant on X, formerly known as Twitter, or read this book if we didn't have words? There would be no such thing as the U.S. Constitution or the Bill of Rights, no Bible, Torah, or Quran. You wouldn't be able to say, I love you, or what are you thinking about? Language allows us to explicitly convey complex thoughts and feelings. Some might say it is the window into human nature, according to Pinker 2007, page 27. L07 define language and give examples of its basic elements. Language can be defined as a system for using symbols, words, gestures, and sounds to think and communicate. These symbols can be spoken, written, and signed. The average English-speaking college student is familiar with around 10,000 to 11,000 families, groups of related words such as smile, smiled, smiling, according to Treffers, Dollar, and Milton 2013. What's more, humans are always finding new meanings for old words or inventing new ones. Have you ever heard of a squib kick, a pooch punt, or a flea flicker, according to Costora 2012? All these were created to describe kicks and plays in football. Phenoms. At the core of all spoken words are phenoms. Phonemes. At the core of all spoken words are phonemes, the units of sound that serve as basic building blocks for all words. Infographic 7.3. Examples of English phonemes include the sounds made by the letter T in the word tail and the letter S in sail. Some letters correspond to more than one phoneme. For example, the letter I can represent two clearly different phonemes, as in the words bit and bite. Infants between 6 and 8 months can recognize all phonemes from all languages, but this ability begins to diminish at about 10 months. At this point, babies show the first signs of being culture-bound listeners, according to Cole 2015, page 67. At this point, babies show the first signs of being culture-bound listeners, according to Cole 2015, page 67. That is, they have a harder time distinguishing between phonemes of unfamiliar languages, according to D. Boyson Barty's ETAL 1989 and Worker and T's 1984. This is why older children and adults have difficulty learning to speak foreign languages without the accent of their birth language. Morphemes. Representing the next level of language are morphemes. Morphemes consist of one or more morphemes. Morphemes consist of one or more phonemes, and they bring meaning to a language. For example, the word unimaginable has 3 morphemes: unimagine and able. Each morpheme communicates something. Remove just one and the word takes on a whole new significance. Clipping off un, for example, produces the word imaginable, which means the exact opposite of unimaginable. Grammar. Grammar refers to the rules associated with both word and sentence structure, according to Evans and Green 2006. It tells us how words are made from sounds, how sentences are formed with words, where to place punctuation, and which word tenses to use. It combines syntax and semantics. Syntax refers to the collection of rules dictating where words and phrases should be placed. It guides both word choice and word order, providing consistency in sentence organization, according to Brandon ETAL 2006. We say I love you, not love you I, because English syntax demands that the words appear in this order. Different languages have different syntaxes. In German, some verbs come at the end of sentences, which is striking to native English speakers learning German. Yoda syntax. Moments before his death in Return of the Jedi, Yoda says to Luke Skywalker, "When gone am I, the last of the Jedi you will be," according to Lucasfilm and Marquand 1983, 43-46. Yoda's syntax is atypical, as most people would order the words like this: "When I am gone, you will be the last Jedi." Semantics represents the rules
used to bring meaning to words and sentences. Here are two sentences with different words. Order syntax with the same meaning semantics. Jane kicked the ball. The ball was kicked by Jane. Now here are two sentences with the same syntax but slightly different semantics. Some people enjoy cooking, their families and their dogs. Some people enjoy cooking, their families and their dogs. According to Oxford Royal Academy 2014, paragraph 3, semantics also refers to the context in which words appear. Consider the meaning of snap based on the context of the following sentences. Can you snap your fingers? He got the job done. In a snap, don't snap at me. Oh, snap. Pragmatics. Language is used in social interactions which are governed by certain norms and expectations. Pragmatics are the social rules that help organize this activity. We have to learn how to take turns in a conversation, what gestures to use and when, and how to address people according to social standing. According to Steiner 2012, Yule 1996, when addressing the King of Denmark, you would say, "Good day, Your Majesty." But to a friend, you might say, "Hey there." Infographic 7.3, the building blocks of language. Language is made up of a collection of units and rules. These build upon each order to help us think and communicate. As the base are phonemes, which combine to make morphemes, the smallest units of language that carry meaning. At the top is displacement, which is the human ability to refer to things that are abstract or hypothetical. Displacement, ability to refer to things not present. I was thinking of pie instead. Can I offer you some cupcakes? Pragmatics, social rules such as expressions. Syntax, how words can be combined. Semantics, content rules affecting meaning. I am agreeable versus agreeable I am. He has an agreeable baby versus baby he is agreeable. Morpheme, smallest unit of language that carries meaning. 3 morphemes, disagreeable, disagreeable. Notice how changing one morpheme alters a word's meaning. Phoneme, basic sound units. Disagreeable, sound meaning, rules, grammar, culture, abstraction. Extended description for building blocks of language. Is it hardwired? How do we know these rules for language? Learning theorists propose that children learn language just like they learn other behaviors through processes such as reinforcement and modeling, according to Bandura 1977b and Skinner 1957. In contrast, linguist Noam Chomsky suggests that humans are born with inherent language capabilities. Children needn't be taught the basics of language, according to Chomsky 2000. Language develops like other organs in the body. Chomsky's position is based on the observation that children possess a much deeper knowledge of language than would be expected if they only learned through experience. This knowledge is not simply the result of hearing and imitating. It is hardwired within the brain. A built-in language acquisition device, LAD, accounts for the universality. A built-in language acquisition device, LAD, accounts for the universality of language development. In fact, researchers have observed this capacity for children, according to Chomsky 2000 and Petito and Marentet 1991. Is it unique? Many scientists argue that language, more than any other human ability, truly sets us apart from other species. Animals have evolved complex systems of communication, but some features of human language appear to be unique. One such feature is displacement, the ability to talk and think about things that are not present at the moment.
I wonder if my instructor is going to give a pop quiz today, you might say to a friend. This statement demonstrates displacement because it refers to a hypothetical event. Displacement allows us to communicate about the future and the past and to fantasize about things that may or may not exist. Thinking What We Say, LO8, explained how language influences thought. For many years, psychologists have tried to understand the relationship between language and thought. According to the linguistic relativity hypothesis developed by Benjamin Lee Whorf, 1897 through 1941, the language people speak has an impact on their thinking and perception, 1956. For example, the Inuit and other indigenous peoples of Alaska have many terms that refer to snow in contrast to the single word used in English. This may lead them to perceive and think about snow differently than English speakers. Whorf's hypothesis is not universally accepted, however. Critics suggest that he exaggerated the number of words indigenous peoples of Alaska have for snow and us. Critics suggest that he exaggerated the number of words indigenous peoples of Alaska have for snow and underestimated the number of words in English, according to Pullum, 1991. Kiki or Booba. If you had to name one of these shapes, Kiki, and the other Booba, which would it be? Most people identify the sound of Kiki with a pointy shape left and Booba with a globby shape on the right. This finding comes from a study of people from across the globe who use many different systems of written and spoken language. It points to the possibility that certain sounds may be linked to word meaning, according to Quike ETAL 2022 and O'Grady 2021. Although language might not determine how we perceive and think about the world, it certainly has an influence, according to Athanasopoulos ETAL 2015 and Kirsten ETAL 2010. Consider how languages such as English and Swedish often use he and his when gender is unspecified. This use of masculine pronouns often results in people focusing on males when forming mental images, of course. According to Gastel, 1990, Hegarty, and Bushell, 2006, linguist ETAL 2019. Perhaps you can predict the potential downside of this tendency. Narrowing the focus to male images inevitably promotes gender bias and stereotyping. In one study, researchers exposed Dutch and German schoolchildren to job titles in plural form, an English example being firefighters, or pairs of the titles in female and male forms, firemen and firewomen. Children who were exposed to both male and female forms were more confident about their ability to be successful in traditionally male jobs, according to Verviken and Hanover, 2015. Show what you know. Question number 1. According to the linguistic relativity hypothesis, language has distinct effects on A, phonemes, B, thinking and perception, C, the language acquisition device, or D, displacement. The answer is B, thinking and perception. According to the linguistic relativity hypothesis, language has distinct effects on thinking and perception. Question number 2. Blank are the basic building blocks of spoken language. The answer is phonemes. Phonemes are the basic building blocks of spoken language. Intelligent athletes. In high school and college, Harry was a defensive lineman, one of the guys who tries to disrupt the opposing team's offense before they can execute their play. When drafted by the Giants, Harry was challenged to learn a new position, middle linebacker. It was a position that basically I had to become the leader, the quarterback of the defense, says Harry, who spent many hours taking cognitive tests and meeting with the team psychologist. It was the psychologist's job to determine whether Harry was cognitively fit to play the demanding position of middle linebacker. As history shows, Harry was more than qualified. A fast-thinking problem solver, he proved he could multitask and make sound judgments on the fly. For any given play, he was able to remember what every defensive player was supposed to be doing, and he learned from past experiences, rarely making the same mistake twice. Harry demonstrated a high level of intelligence. What is intelligence? LO9 distinguish among various theories of intelligence. Generally speaking, intelligence is one's innate ability to solve problems, adapt to the environment, and learn from experiences. Intelligence relates to a broad array of psychological processes, including memory, learning, perception, and language, and how it is defined may depend on the variable being measured. In the United States, intelligence is often associated with book smarts. Many of us think intelligent people are those who score high on tests measuring academic abilities, but intelligence is more complicated than that. So complicated, in fact, that psychologists have yet to agree on its precise parameters. It is not even clear whether intelligence is a single, unified entity or a collection of capabilities. We do know that intelligence is, to a certain degree, a cultural construct. So although people in the United States tend to equate intelligence with school smarts, this is not the case everywhere in the world. Children living in a village in Kenya, for example, grow up using herbal medicine to treat parasitic diseases in themselves and others. Identifying illness and developing treatment strategies are a regular part of life. These children would score much higher on intelligence tests relating to practical knowledge than on those assessing vocabulary, according to Sternberg 2004. Even within a single culture, the meaning of intelligence changes across time. Intelligence for modern Kenyans may differ from that of their 14th century ancestors. As we explore the theories of intelligence, please keep in mind that intelligence does not always go hand in hand with intelligent behavior. People can score high on intelligence measures, but exhibit poor judgment. Perhaps you know a straight A student who is somewhat lacking in common sense. Bird brains are pretty intelligent. Bird brains are pretty intelligent. Meet the kia, a very clever parrot from the mountain regions of New Zealand. Not only is this bird extremely adept with its beak, it has been known to pry wipers from car windshields. The kia displays evidence of complex decision-making. Scientists once thought only humans and great apes could predict future events by observing the relative numbers of items in the environment. For example, knowing that you will get more red jelly beans if you reach into a jar containing 70% red and 30% green jelly beans. But now there is evidence that Kias can make these types of predictions too, according to Bastos and Taylor 2020 and Morel 2020. The G factor. How can we explain differences in intelligence? English psychologist and statistician Charles Spearman, 1863 through 1945, speculated that humans have a general intelligence or G factor. This G factor is a singular underlying aptitude or intellectual ability that drives capabilities in many areas, including verbal, spatial, and reasoning competencies. Simply stated, the G factor is the common link. Many types of intelligence. U.S. psychologist Howard Gardner suggests that people have multiple intelligences, according to Gardner, 1999, 2011, and 2020. He proposed various types of intelligences or frames of mind: linguistic, verbal, logical, mathematical, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, and naturalist. He proposed various types of intelligences or frames of mind: linguistic, verbal, logical, mathematical, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, intrapersonal, interpersonal, and naturalist. Examine Table 7.1 and consider how various occupations might be better suited for people with strengths in different intelligences. Table 7.1, Gardner's multiple intelligences. Intelligences, core competencies, occupational or avocational matches. Intelligences, linguistic, core competencies, verbal abilities including speech, reading, writing, communication of meaning, aware of sound dynamics and goals of language. Occupational or avocational matches: poet, journalist, lawyer, storyteller, public relations professional. Intelligences, logical, mathematical, core competencies, complex math and reasoning abilities, aware of numerical patterns. Occupational or avocational matches: scientist, mathematician, accountant, computer analyst, stockbroker. Intelligences, musical, core competencies, a range of musical avocations including sensitivity to pitch, rhythm, and sound quality, and an understanding of the emotional meaning of music. Occupational or avocational matches: composer, musical performer, music critic, music fan. Intelligences, spatial, core competencies, spatial cognition abilities, skilled in visual arts, adept in 3D navigation and mental rotation tasks. Occupational or avocational matches: architect, pilot, sculptor, chess master, landscape designer, graphic designer. Bodily kinesthetic, body awareness, body control, dexterity, competence with handling objects. Dancer, athlete, craftsperson, surgeon, laboratory worker, fitness instructor. Interpersonal, social perception, interpersonal understanding, such as responding to others' moods, personality characteristics, wishes, competent leadership. Therapist, salesperson, spiritual or religious leader, teacher. Intrapersonal, self-awareness, self-regulation, self-other management, knowledge of own weaknesses, wishes, competencies, therapist. Naturalist, pattern cognition, classifying objects, understanding living entities, animals, and plant life. Scientist, veterinarian, zoologist, arborist. Summarized here are Gardner's multiple intelligences, all of which are associated with certain strengths and capabilities. Information from Gardner 2003-2020, Gardner and Hatch 1989, Shearer 2020, Visser ETAL 2006. According to Gardner 2011, partial evidence for multiple intelligences come from studying people with brain damage. Some mental capabilities are lost, whereas others remain intact, suggesting that they are actually distinct categories. Further evidence for multiple intelligences, as opposed to just a G factor, comes from observing people with savant syndrome. Individuals with savant syndrome have some area of extreme singular ability. Calendar calculations, art, mental arithmetic, and so on. According to Treffer 2015, the late Kim Peek, for example, was able to simultaneously read 2 pages of a book, one with each eye, and memorize nearly all the information it contained. Like the movie character he inspired, Raymond Babbitt, in the film Rain Man, Peek had extraordinarily intellectual abilities, according to Brogard and Marlowe 2012 and Treffer 2015. 3 kinds of intelligence. U.S. psychologist Robert Sternberg proposed 3 kinds of intelligence. Sternberg's 1988 Treyarchic theory of intelligence suggests that humans have varying degrees of analytical, creative, and practical competencies. Figure 7.4, analytic intelligence refers to our capacity to solve problems. Creative intelligence represents the knowledge and skills we use to handle new situations. And practical intelligence includes our ability to adjust to different environments. Analytic intelligence refers to our capacity to solve problems. Creative intelligence represents the knowledge and skills we use to handle new situations. And practical intelligence includes our ability to adjust to different environments. Analytical, solve problems. Creative, handle new situations. Practical, adjust to different environments. Extended description for Figure 7.4, Sternberg's Triarchic Theory of Intelligence. Figure 7.4, Sternberg's Triarchic Theory of Intelligence. Critics contend Sternberg's Triarchic Theory of Intelligence and Gardner's Multiple Intelligence Theory lack scientific support, according to Gardner 2020 and Shearer and Karanian 2017, as well as Waterhouse 2006. There are many ways to understand intelligence. Table 7.2, and it's important to remember that none are categorically right or wrong. Table 7.2, Theories of Intelligence. Theory, summary, further questions. Theory, Spearman's general intelligence, G factor. There is a general intelligence driving abilities in many areas. Summary, a connection exists among different abilities such as verbal, spatial, and reasoning. A connection exists among different abilities such as verbal, spatial, and reasoning competencies. Further questions. Given the complexity of the mind, can intelligence really be explained by a single general factor? Theory, Gardner's multiple intelligences. There are 8 types of intelligences, each associated with certain strengths and capabilities. Summary, different frames of mind allow humans to succeed. Further questions, what differentiates intelligence from skills? Theory, Sternberg's Triarchic Theory. Humans have varying degrees of analytical, creative, and practical competencies. Summary, analytic intelligence is the capacity to solve problems. Creative intelligence is the knowledge and skills used to handle new situations, and practical intelligence is the ability to adjust to different environments. Further questions, are each of these areas separate, or do they share something in common like a G factor? Summarized here are the main theories of intelligence and some of the questions they raise. Measuring intelligence, LO10, describe how intelligence is measured and identify the important characteristics of assessment. The development of the theories described above was to some degree aided by tests of intelligence. What are these tests, and what exactly do they aim to measure? Tests of intelligence, IQ tests, generally aim to measure aptitude or a person's potential for future learning. On the other hand, measures of achievement, tests such as the SAT and ACT, are designed to assess acquired knowledge, that is, what a person has previously learned. The line between aptitude and achievement tests can be blurry, as tests are not always one or the other. For example, the SAT is considered an achievement test because it measures knowledge, but acquiring knowledge is somewhat contingent on innate ability. Therefore, the SAT might also qualify as an indirect measure of aptitude. Likewise, aptitude tests may incorporate some level of achievement or learned content. For example, intelligence tests can be biased in favor of groups of people who have had certain life experiences, exposure to high-quality schools, for example. More on this to come. How did intelligence testing begin? How did intelligence testing begin? Intelligence testing is more than a century old. In 1904, psychologist Alfred Binet, 1857 through 1911, joined a commission of the French government that was looking for a way to predict the performance of school children. According to Fancher and Rutherford, 2012, and Watson, 1968, working with one of his students, Theodore Simon, 1872 through 1961. Binet constructed an intelligence assessment consisting of 30 items. According to Ludden, 2021, these items were designed to be of increasing difficulty, starting with a simple test instructing the child to follow the movement of a lit match, and later asking them to explain how paper and cardboard are different, and to create rhymes with words, among other things, according to Fancher and Rutherford, 2012. Binet and Simon assumed that children generally follow the same path of intellectual development. By comparing a child's mental ability with the mental abilities of other children in the same age group, they could determine the child's mental age, MA. For example, a 10-year-old child with average intellectual abilities would perform similarly to other 10-year-old children and thus would have a mental age of 10. A 10-year-old child with high intelligence would perform better than other 10-year-old children and thus have a mental age that was higher than their chronological age, for example, 12. Similarly, a child with an intellectual delay would have a mental image that was lower than their chronological age. Although Binet and Simon's intelligence measure was groundbreaking at the time, it had limitations. Perhaps most importantly, it could not be used to compare intelligence levels across age groups. You can't use mental age to compare the intelligence levels of an 8-year-old child and a 12-year-old child. For example, German psychologist William Stern, 1871 through 1938, solved this problem by devising the intelligence quotient, IQ. To calculate an IQ score, simply divide a child's mental age by their chronological age and multiply it by 100. For example, a 10-year-old with a mental age of 8 would have an IQ score of 8 divided by 10 times 100 equals 80. When mental age and chronological age are the same, the IQ score is 100. The IQ score allows you to compare a child with children of all different ages. The IQ calculation does not work with adults, however. It wouldn't make sense to give a 60-year-old person who scores the same as a 30-year-old person an IQ score of 50. That is, 30 divided by 60 times 100 equals 50. Modern intelligence tests still assign a numerical score, which we continue to refer to as IQ, but they no longer use the actual quotient. The Stanford Binet test, U.S. psychologist Lewis Terman, 1877 through 1956, revised Stern's work so that Binet's test could be used in the United States, where it came to be known as the Stanford Binet Terman 1916. Changed some items, added items, developed standards based on U.S. children, and extended the test to include teens and adults. The Stanford Binet Intelligence Scales, now in its 5th edition, according to Royd 2003, includes the assessment of verbal and nonverbal abilities, for instance, defining words, tracing paths in a maze. This test generates an overall score for general intelligence as well as scores associated with more specific abilities such as knowledge, reasoning, visual processing, and working memory, according to Becker 2003. It's not rocket science. Doesn't really hold up. Surely you have heard people say it's not rocket science or it's not brain surgery when referring to an easy task. The implication is that rocket scientists and brain surgeons are on another level when it comes to intelligence. But a recent study found that apart from problem-solving speed, where neurosurgeons tend to excel, people in these professions are not superior to the general population when multiple cognitive domains are considered. It is possible that both neurosurgeons and aerospace engineers are unnecessarily placed on a pedestal. According to Usher ETAL 2021, page 1. The Wechsler tests. In the late 1930s, U.S. psychologist David Wechsler, 1896 through 1981, began creating intelligence tests for adults, according to Anastasi and Urbina, 1997. At the time, adults were often given the Stanford Binet, which was really geared to the daily experiences of school-aged children. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, WAIS, was published in 1955 and has since been revised numerous times, 1981, 1997, 2008. As of this printing, the newest version, WAIS 5, has not been released. In addition to creating assessments for adults, Wechsler also developed scales for older children. Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, WIS C-V, and younger children, Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence, WPPSI-IV. WPPSI-IV. The Wechsler assessments consist of subtests designed to measure different aspects of intellectual ability. Gibbons and Warnay, 2019, for example, the 10 subtests on the WAIS adult version of the test target 4 domains of intellectual performance: verbal abilities, perceptual reasoning, working memory, and processing speed. If you take the WAIS-IV, you will receive scores for these 4 domains, as well as an overall intelligence quotient (IQ) score. Psychologists look for consistency among the domain and subtest scores, as opposed to focusing only on the overall IQ score. A substantial inconsistency could be a sign of a problem, such as a reading or language disability. In the United States, Wechsler tests are now used more frequently than the Stanford Binet IQ tests and scientific racism. IQ tests and scientific racism. As we discuss the history of intelligence testing, we cannot ignore the fact that some assessments, including those developed by Binet, were used to produce evidence that perpetuated harmful racial stereotypes. In the early 1900s, researchers comparing children of different ethnicities concluded that black children were adept at rote memory, but didn't measure up to the white children in the early 1900s, researchers comparing children of different ethnicities concluded that black children were adept at rote memory, but didn't measure up to white children in intellectual activities such as reasoning. In the early 1900s, researchers comparing children of different ethnicities concluded that black children were adept at rote memory, but didn't measure up to white children in intellectual activities such as reasoning, use of words, and logical memory, according to Belgrave and Allison 2019. But such conclusions are based on evidence from tests that were fundamentally biased in favor of white children. As some scholars have pointed out, early standardized testing quite clearly operated as a technology to support supposedly scientific basis for claims of white superiority. According to Noster and AU 2017, page 6, to illustrate how intelligence tests are slanted in favor of the white majority, researchers have created tests biased toward minority cultural groups. For example, the Dove Counterbalance General Intelligence Test, also known as the Chitling Test, shows how children of color from urban backgrounds can surpass white middle-income children on measures of knowledge. Generally not included in standard IQ tests, according to Kaplan and Secuzzo 2018. Let's test the intelligence tests. How do you know if an intelligence test is effective? Psychologists focus on 3 important characteristics: validity, reliability, and standardization. Infographic 7.4, how valid is it? Validity is the degree to which an assessment measures what it intends to measure. A valid intelligence test measures intelligence, not something else. We can assess the validity of a measure by comparing its results to those of other assessments that measure the factor of interest. We can also determine whether the test predicts future performance on other assessments, a concept known as predictive validity. Valid intelligence tests generate scores that are consistent with those of other intelligence tests, and they can predict future performance on tasks related to intellectual ability. How reliable is it? Another important characteristic of assessment is reliability, the ability of a test to provide consistent, reproducible results. If given repeatedly, a reliable test will continue producing similar scores. Suppose you take an intelligence test today, next month, and 5 years from now. If the test is reliable, your scores should be consistent. Another way to gauge reliability is by splitting the test in half and then determining whether the findings of the first and second halves agree with each other. We call this split half reliability. Is it possible for a test to be reliable but not valid? Absolutely. For this reason, we always have to determine both reliability and validity. Imagine a psychologist is using a test that claims to measure intelligence. The test is reliable because it produces similar scores when people are retested, but it's not valid because it actually measures reading level instead of intelligence. In other words, the test reliably measures reading level achievement, but it does not measure intelligence aptitude. Is it standardized? In addition to being valid and reliable, a good intelligence test provides standardization. Perhaps you have taken a test that measured your achievement in a particular area, for example, an ACT or SAT, or an aptitude test to measure your innate abilities, an IQ test. Upon receiving your scores, you may have wondered how you performed in comparison to other people in your class, college, or state. Most aptitude and achievement tests allow you to make these judgments through standardization. Test developers achieve standardization by administering a test to a large sample of people and then publishing the average scores or norms for specified groups. This allows you to compare your score, often as percentile, with people of the same age, socioeconomic status, or geographic region. Good news for gamers. Playing video games may be associated with slightly higher scores on intelligence tests. A study of more than 5,000 kids found that children who played more video games were the ones experiencing the most gains in intelligence after 2 years, according to SOS ETAL 2022, page 6. This finding builds on previous studies suggesting that action video games may promote improvements in working memory, visual processing, and other cognitive abilities, according to SOS ETAL 2022. Standardization is also achieved through the use of standard procedures, which ensure that no one is given unfair advantage. Intelligence tests are subject to tight control. The public does not have access to the questions or answers, and all testing must be administered by a professional. Perhaps you have came across IQ tests on the internet. We don't recommend them, in part because they lack standardization and they aren't necessarily reliable or valid. Research connections. In Chapter 1, we discuss the importance of operational definitions, which specify the precise manner in which variables are defined and measured. Operational definitions help ensure standardization across experiments. Here we note that standard procedures are important when administering assessments as well. Data must be collected in a controlled fashion to ensure errors don't arise from unknown environmental factors. The normal curve. Have you ever wondered how many people in the population are really smart, or perhaps how many people have average intelligence? With results from aptitude tests like the Wechsler and Stanford Binet, we can graph a normal curve, which shows us how scores on intelligence tests are distributed. Infographic 7.4, the normal curve is symmetrical and shaped like a bell. The highest point on the graph represents the average score. The normal curve shown in infographic 7.4 portrays the distribution of scores for the Wechsler tests. As you can see, the mean or average score is 100. As you follow the horizontal axis, notice that the higher and lower scores occur less and less frequently in the population. A score of 145 or 70 is far less common than a score of 100, for example. The normal curve can be used to make predictions about a variety of traits, including IQ, height, weight, and personality characteristics.
Refer to Chapter 1 in the Introduction to Statistic Appendix for more information about the normal curve and other statistical concepts. Infographic 7.4. How smart are intelligence tests? Tests that claim to measure intelligence are everywhere, online, in your favorite magazine, at job interviews, and in many elementary and secondary schools. But can all of these tests be trusted? The results of an intelligence test aren't meaningful unless the test is valid, reliable, and fair. But what do those concepts mean, and how can we be sure whether a test is valid, reliable, or fair, let alone all three? Let's take a look. Is a bathroom scale valid for measuring weight? Validity. Do the tests measure what it intends to measure? How about a ruler missing its first inch? A shortened ruler would not be a valid measure because it would provide different results than other rulers. A valid intelligence test will provide results that agree with the results of other valid intelligence tests, predict performance in an area related to intelligence, such as academic achievement. Reliability. Will your score be consistent every time you take the test? A shortened ruler is invalid, but it is reliable because it will give the same result every time it's used. A reliable intelligence test will provide results that are reproducible, produces a similar score if taken a second time. Show the first and second halves of the test are consistent with each other. 68% of all people score within 15 points above or below the average score. Number of scores, Wechsler IQ scores. Because most intelligence tests are standardized, you can determine how well you have performed in comparison to others. Test scores tend to form a bell-shaped curve called the normal curve around the average score. Most people, 68%, score within 15 points above or below the average. If the test is reliable, each person's score should stay around the same place on the curve across multiple testings. Fairness. Is the test valid for the group? An animal weighing 2 stone is likely to be A sparrow, B, a small dog, C, mature lion, or D, blue whale. Unless you live in the United Kingdom, where the imperial system of weights is used, you probably wouldn't know that a stone is approximately 14 pounds, and therefore the correct answer is B. Does this mean that you are less intelligent, or that the test is biased against people without a specific background? A test that is culture fair is designed to minimize the bias of cultural background. 3 inches, 2.286 Chinese imperial kun, 0.1667 cubits. Extended description for infographic 7.4. How smart are intelligence tests? But are they fair? As we discussed earlier, one major concern with intelligence assessments is fairness. Are these tests biased in favor of people of a certain gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic class? The evidence suggests they are. For example, researchers have reported disparities among groups within the United States, according to C.C. and Williams 2009, Cottrell et al. 2015, Dickens and Flynn 2006, Warnay et al. 2018. Additionally, a review from over a decade ago found average test score differences among groups with origins in various parts of the world: Asia, Africa, Europe, Latin America, and so on. Rushton and Jensen 2010. Although researchers disagree about what causes these gaps in IQ scores, they generally agree that there is no evidence to support a genetic hypothesis
across races, Nisbet ETAL 2012. As you will learn in the social psychology chapter, race is just a cultural construct, not a meaningful biological category. IQ scores are shaped by a variety of environmental factors, including income level, education, and maternal verbal abilities, according to Cottrell ETAL 2015. Socioeconomic status, SES, appears to play a key role, according to Von Stum ETAL 2020. A disproportionate number of children of color grow up in lower SES households, according to Noel 2018, and therefore are exposed to environmental factors that may be linked to performance on tests of intelligence. For example, children raised in homes with lower SES are more likely to witness violence, which may impair certain aspects of memory, according to Rosen ETAL 2019. They may also have more exposure to TV, caregivers who are not available to read them, and less access to books, technology, and quality schools, according to Hanscombe ETAL 2012. Connections. In the memory chapter, we discuss the biology of memory, exploring areas of the brain responsible for memory processing, hippocampus, cerebellum, and amygdala, as well as changes at the level of the neuron long-term potentiation. Here we note that the environments can impact the functioning of the memory system. Stress is another factor that may contribute to the IQ score gap. Research suggests that low-income children are more likely to experience chronic stress caused by frequent exposure to frightening or threatening events. According to Morsi and Rothstein 2019, page 1, chronic stress can have a negative impact on the function of the brain, particularly those areas responsible for attention and memory, short-term, long-term, and memory. Chronic stress can have a negative impact on the function of the brain, particularly those areas responsible for attention and memory, short-term, long-term, and working memory, according to McEwen 2000. When discussing sensitive topics like IQ scores, it is important to remember that IQ tests were developed in a society that is plagued by systemic racism, and all the individuals taking these tests were raised under the influence of systemic racism. It's also important to establish some ground rules for these discussions. Here are a few we think are particularly important, according to Burton and Warnay 2020, page 137. Even though mean differences exist across groups, there is still a lot of overlap across groups. All possible explanations for causes of mean group differences should be explored. Mean group differences do not justify discriminatory behavior. Can we level the playing field? We have discussed some environmental factors that might lead to disparities in IQ scores, maternal qualities, SES, and stressful living conditions. We have also noted that the gaps in test scores could result from biases of the tests themselves. Early versions of IQ tests exhibited some bias against people from rural areas, people of lower socioeconomic status, and Black Americans. Bias may result from language, dialect, or the culture of those who have created the tests, according to Sattler 1990 and Sternberg 2004. Psychologists have tried to create culture-fair intelligence tests, which aim to measure intelligence without putting people at a disadvantage because of their cultural backgrounds. One way to avoid bias is to create questions that are familiar to people from a variety of cultures. Another approach is to use nonverbal questions. Refer to the sample item in Figure 7.5. Since intelligence is defined within a culture and tests are created within a culture, it may be impossible to develop assessments that are truly culture fair or culture free, according to Sternberg 2004. Extended description for Figure 7.5, Nonverbal Intelligence. Figure 7.5, Nonverbal Intelligence. The problem above is similar to those encountered on nonverbal intelligence assessments. In this example, the test taker chooses the item that completes the matrix pattern. Such assessments are often considered culturally fair, but many scholars have challenged this belief. According to Gonthier 2022, despite their limitations, IQ tests are useful in certain contexts. For example, they can be used to predict academic success. IQ scores, particularly those in the higher and lower ranges, are strongly correlated with performance on SATs, ACTs, and graduate record examinations, GREs. Although some researchers have found that self-discipline may be a better predictor of success, according to Duckworth and Seligman 2005. Intelligence tests are also helpful for identifying delays in intellectual functioning or intellectual developmental disorder, IDD. The diversity of human intelligence, intellectual development disorder consists of delays in thinking, intelligence, and social and practical skills that are evident before age 18. This condition is indicated by low IQ scores below approximately 70 on the Wechsler tests and adaptive functioning deficits, difficulty living independently and understanding number concepts, money and hygiene, for example, American Psychiatric Association, 2022. Disability equals diversity. Students gather for a photo at Syracuse University, SU, home of the Inclusive U program that serves students with IDDs. Students in Inclusive U take regular college classes, pursue internships, and participate in athletics. At SU, we celebrate disability because it makes our campus stronger, more diverse, and much more interesting. Syracuse University, ND, paragraph 3. There are many causes of IDD, but we cannot always pinpoint them. According to the American Association on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, AAIDD, nearly half of IDD cases have unidentifiable causes. According to Shalok, ETAL 2010, known causes include Down syndrome, where there is an extra chromosome in what would normally be the 21st pair. Fetal alcohol syndrome, the result of in utero exposure to alcohol, and Fragile X syndrome, a deficit in a gene on the X chromosome, leading to reductions in protein needed for development of the brain. There are also known environmental factors that contribute to IDDs, including lead and mercury. There are also known environmental factors that contribute to IDD, including lead and mercury poisoning, lack of oxygen at birth. There are also known environmental factors that contribute to IDDs, including lead and mercury poisoning, lack of oxygen at birth. There are also known environmental factors that contribute to IDDs, including lead and mercury poisoning, lack of oxygen at birth, various diseases, and exposure to drugs during fetal development. At the other end of the intelligence spectrum are the intellectually gifted. At the other end of the intelligence spectrum are the intellectually gifted, those who have IQ scores of 130 or above. With a score above 140, one is considered a genius, as you might imagine. Very few people, about 2% of the population, are classified as gifted. An even smaller proportion falls in the genius range, only 1% of the population, according to Symington 2012. The termites Louis Terman mentioned earlier was curious to know how gifted children function in adulthood. His work led to the longest-running longitudinal study on genius and giftedness. According to Warnay 2019, the study, formerly referred to as the Genetic Studies of Genius, is now called the Terman Study of the Gifted. Terman 1925 monitored 857 boys and 671 girls with IQ scores ranging from 130 to 200. These children, known as termites, were well-adjusted socially, showed leadership skills, and were physically healthy and conventionally attractive, according to Terman and Odin 1947. They also had lower rates of mental illness. According to Ludden 2021, Following the participants into adulthood, the study found that they earned a greater number of academic degrees and achieved more financial success than their non-gifted peers, according to Fancher and Rutherford 2012, Halahan and Sears 1995, Luden 2021. Compelling as these findings may be, they do not necessarily indicate that high IQ scores guarantee success in all areas of life. For example, people who score highly on intelligence tests fall prey to the same cognitive biases that plague all of us. They may rely on anecdotal evidence, consume biased and blatantly one-sided information, and seek out evidence that confirms their pre-existing views. Confirmation bias. According to Halpern and Dunn 2021, page 1, a high IQ score does not guarantee someone will be a critical thinker or an effective problem solver in the real world. In fact, evidence suggests that critical thinking is a learned skill, according to Halpern and Dunn 2021. Life smarts. Most tests of intelligence fail to capture emotional intelligence, which is critical for thriving in a social world. Emotional intelligence is the capacity to perceive, understand, regulate, and use emotions to adapt to social situations. According to Goldman, 1995, people with emotional intelligence are empathetic and use information about their emotions to direct their behavior in an efficient and creative way. According to Salovi, ETAL 2002, they are self-aware and can properly judge how to behave in social situations. A high level of emotional intelligence is indicated by self-control, the ability to manage anger, impulsiveness, and anxiety. As you might predict, emotional intelligence is related to performance on the job and at school, according to Joseph, ETAL 2015, and McCann, ETAL 2011. It sounds like a wonderful gift, something you don't want to stifle. If this is a priority for you, read on.
Didn't see that coming. Little lies, big problems. Have you ever told a little lie? Sorry, I'm late. I got stuck in traffic. Stretched a story to impress friends, or cheated in a card game. These little lapses in morality may seem relatively benign, but research suggests they can erode aspects of your emotional intelligence, according to Lee, ETAL 2020. Specifically, dishonest conduct can reduce one's generalized empathic Dishonest conduct can reduce one's generalized empathic accuracy, the ability to accurately read other people's emotional states, according to Lee, ETAL 2019, page 1557. Why would it be important to read the emotional states of others? Understanding other people's feelings can help you address their needs, negotiate and work through problems, and develop tighter bonds, according to Lee, ETAL 2019. If you act dishonestly, you are compromising this ability, and this may occur because you are becoming increasingly detached. As researchers explain, once we engage in dishonest behavior, we may also distance ourselves from other people by regarding them as less human, which allows us to continue down a path of subsequent repeated unethical behavior, according to Lee, ETAL 2020, page 22. As you may have observed in your own life, people display varying degrees of emotional intelligence. From where does this diversity in emotional intelligence or any facet of intelligence arise? Like most topics in psychology, it comes down to nature and nurture. Is intelligence genetic? Researching identical and fraternal twins is an excellent way to evaluate the contributions of nature and nurture for virtually any psychological trait. The Minnesota study of twins reared apart, MISTRA, indicates there are strong correlations between the IQ scores of identical twins, stronger than those between fraternal twins or other siblings. In other words, the closer the genetic relationship, identical twins have identical genes at conception. The greater similarity in IQ scores, according to Johnson and Bouchard, 2011, McHugh, ETAL 1993, and Shaft, ETAL 2015. In fact, identical twins' IQ scores have correlations as high as 0.86. Remember that the closer R is to plus 1.00 or to minus 1.00, the stronger the relationship. Figure 7.6. This suggests that genes play a major role in determining scores on intelligence tests. In other words, performance on IQ tests appears to be highly heritable. Similarity in IQ scores correlation. Identical twins reared together, identical twins reared apart, fraternal twins reared together, siblings reared together, unrelated individuals reared together, siblings reared apart. Extended description for Figure 7.6, nature, nurture, and intelligence. Figure 7.6, nature, nurture, and intelligence. The most genetically similar people, identical twins, exhibit the strongest correlation between their scores on IQ tests. This suggests that genes play a major role in determining intelligence. But if identical twins are raised in different environments, the correlation is slightly lower, showing some environmental effect. Information from McHugh, ETAL 1993. Heritability refers to the degree to which heredity is responsible for a particular characteristic or trait in the population. Many traits, such as eye color and height, are highly heritable. Others, such as manners, are largely determined by the environments in which we are raised, according to Dickens and Flynn, 2001. Results from twin and adoption studies suggest that heritability for general cognitive abilities is about 50%, according to Plowman and DeFries, 1998, and Plowman, ETAL, 2013. In other words, about half of the variation in intellectual or cognitive ability can be attributed to genetic makeup and the other half to environment. But heritability estimates of cognitive abilities can be misleading. As scholars point out, intelligence seems to be quite malleable, and changes in the environment can, by interacting with genes, explain a great deal of differences in IQ across families, lifespan, socioeconomic status, and generations, according to Sauce and Mansell, 2018, page 27. Think critically. Sex-based brain differences. Do they matter? Over the years, researchers have uncovered some intriguing differences between the brains of males and females. For example, females tend to have more gray matter volume in some parts of the frontal lobes, including an area important for emotional awareness and emotional processing and working memory, according to Lotze, ETAL 2019, and Smith, ETAL 2018. Meanwhile, males tend to have more gray matter volume in some areas beneath the cortex, including the amygdala and hippocampus, according to Lotze, ETAL 2019. Male brains also may differ in their degree of connectivity. A study of children and young adults found that males had stronger connections within hemispheres, whereas females had stronger connections between hemispheres. According to Engelhalliker, ETAL 2014, and Jahanashad and Thompson 2017. Connections. In the biology and behavior chapter, we describe gray matter and white matter in the brain. Gray matter consists largely of neuron cell bodies and glial cells. White matter is made up of axons wrapped in myelin. Here we note some differences between females and males in regard to their gray and white matter. While researchers may agree about some of the structural inconsistencies between male and female brains, it is not entirely clear how these disparities relate to behaviors and cognitive abilities. According to Grabowska 2017 and Lonsdorf 2017. For example, do differences in brain structure lead to disparities in educational and career choices? Males outnumber females in some science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM fields, namely computer science, physics, and engineering, according to Kempian, ETAL 2020, National Science Foundation 2021, Figure 7.7. Meanwhile, females are overrepresented in social work, nursing, and K-12 education, according to U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics 2022. They also earn more degrees in psychology, though we should mention that female psychologists earn lower salaries and are less likely than their male counterparts to get their research published in high-impact journals. According to Gruber ETAL 2021, do these trends occur because males and females are hardwired differently, or are they socially conditioned to develop certain interests and skills? Remember, the brain can change in response to experience, a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. Connections. In Chapter 1, we presented the nature and nurture theme and discussed its importance in the field of psychology. Here, we can see how both nature and nurture could potentially explain the gender imbalance in career choices. Researchers continue to evaluate the relative influence of nature and nurture in female and male behavior patterns. Math and statistics. Males 57.7%, females 42.3%. Physical sciences, males 59.4%, females 40.6%. Engineering, females 22.2%, males 77.8%. Computer science, females 19.9%, males 80.1%. Extended description for Figure 7.7 bachelor's degrees awarded in the United States. Figure 7.7 bachelor's degrees awarded in the United States. Females earn the majority, 57.4% of all bachelor's degrees awarded in the United States in 2018. But when it comes to degrees awarded in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, the numbers look very different. Why are females underrepresented in these areas? Information from National Science Foundation 2021. Whatever the cause, sex differences have been observed in certain cognitive domains. For example, studies suggest that females outperform males in tests of verbal ability, while males perform better in mental rotation tasks. According to Heel, ETAL 2018, and Stoet and Geary 2013. But such propensities are small and apply to populations, not necessarily individuals. And while it's important to study this topic, we should be wary of research discoveries being used to legitimatize false stereotypes and provide fuel for those determined to convince the world of the inferiority of females. according to Halpern, 2014, page 92. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is that the brains of males and females are more alike than different in terms of both structure and function, according to D. Joel, ETAL 2018. There is no evidence for a smarter sex, according to Halpern, 2014, page 91. We have explored the concept of intelligence and various approaches to assess it. Now let's shift our focus to a quality that is associated with intelligence, but far more difficult to measure: creativity. Let's get creative. Harry never approached football in a conventional way when he was learning the ropes in his new middle linebacker position with the Giants. The coach provided specific instructions to accomplish his objectives. Harry would execute the task, but not always the way the coach had prescribed. Everything he tried to get me to do, I did it backwards. But I got the same or better results, Harry explains. Eventually, the coach gave up and allowed Harry the freedom to think outside the box. He threw up his hands and said, "As long as you get the job done, I can't fault you." LO11 defined creativity and its associated characteristics. Harry was using creativity to solve problems on the football field, just as you might use creativity to resolve a tricky situation in school or spice up a bland recipe in your kitchen. In a problem-solving scenario, creativity is the ability to construct valuable results in innovative ways. Table 7.3. Creativity and intelligence are not equivalent, but they are correlated, and a basic level of intelligence is necessary for creativity to flow, according to Jarsveld, ETAL 2015. For example, you need to have a certain level of intelligence to generate original ideas as opposed to just more ideas, according to Benedict, ETAL 2012, and Nussbaum and Sylvia 2011. Table 7.3. Characteristics of creativity. Characteristic, meaning. Characteristic, originality, meaning the ability to come up with unique solutions when trying to solve a problem. Fluency, the ability to create many potential solutions. Flexibility, the ability to use a variety of problem-solving tactics to arrive at solutions. Knowledge, a sufficient base of ideas and information. Thinking, the ability to see things in new ways, make connections, see patterns. Personality characteristics of a risk taker, someone who preserves and tolerates ambiguity. Intrinsic motivation, influenced by internal rewards, motivated by the pleasure and challenge of work. Creativity is difficult to measure because it doesn't present itself in a singular or uniform manner. However, these basic characteristics are generally associated with creativity, according to Bayer 1993, Sternberg 2006A, and 2006B. Divergent and convergent thinking. An important component of creativity is divergent thinking, or the ability to devise many solutions to a problem, according to Bayer 1993, Kerr, and Stahl 2019. A classic measure of divergent thinking is the unusual uses test, according to Guilford 1967 and Guilford ETAL 1960, figure 7.8. A typical prompt would ask a test taker to come up with as many uses for a brick as the test taker can imagine. What ideas do you have? Paperweight, shot put, step stool. Remember that we often have difficulty thinking about how to use familiar objects in atypical ways, a result of functional fixedness. In this test, you will be asked to consider some common objects. Each object has a common use, which will be stated You are to list as many as 6 other uses for which the object or parts of the object could serve. Example, given a newspaper used for reading, you might think of the following other uses for a newspaper. A. Start a fire. B. Wrap garbage. C. Swat flies. D. Stuffing to pack boxes. E. Line drawers or shelves. F. Make a kidnap note. Notice that all of the uses listed are different from each other and different from the primary use of a newspaper. Notice that all of the uses listed are different from each other and different from the primary use of a newspaper. Each acceptable use must be different from others and from the common use. Extended description for figure 7.8 Guilford's alternate uses task. Figure 7.8 Guilford's alternate uses task. The same question above is from Guilford's alternate uses task, a revised version of the unusual uses test, which is designed to gauge creativity. In contrast to divergent thinking, convergent thinking focuses on finding a single best solution by converging on the correct answer. Here we fall back on previous experience and knowledge. This conventional approach to problem solving leads to one solution, but as we have noted, problems often have multiple solutions. Creativity comes with many benefits. People with this ability tend to have a broader range of knowledge and interests. They are open to new experiences and often less inhibited in their thoughts and behaviors, according to Feast 2004, Simonton 2000. The good news is that we can become more creative by practicing divergent thinking, taking risks, and looking for unusual connections between ideas, according to Bayer 1993. Happy endings. This chapter may be coming to an end, but the stories of Dr. Taylor and Harry Carson continue full speed ahead. It took Dr. Taylor 8 years to recuperate from what she now calls her stroke of insight. Regaining her physical and cognitive strength required steadfast determination and painstaking effort. Recovery was a decision I had to make 1,000,000 times a day, she wrote, according to Taylor 2006, page 115. She also had many people cheering her on, family and friends who had faith in her brain's plasticity or ability to repair and rewire, according to Taylor 2006. Today, Dr. Taylor works on various projects to increase understanding of the brain and support those recovering from neurological damage. Her latest book, Whole Brain Living, The Anatomy of Choice and the 4 Characters That Drive Our Life, was published in 2021, drjilltaylor.com, ND. To hear her recount her life-changing experience, watch her viral TED Talk. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. In 2006, Harry Carson was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he was not in the mood for celebrating. Harry used his enshrinement speech to advocate on behalf of his fellow players. I would hope that the leaders of the NFL, the future commissioner, and the Players Association do a much better job of looking out for those individuals. If we made the league what it is, you have to take better care of your own. Pro Football Hall of Fame, ND. Harry Carson. It would take another decade for the NFL to finally admit that head injuries sustained in football are associated with CTE and FANARU 2016. It would take another decade for the NFL to finally admit that head injuries sustained in football are associated with CTE, according to Fenaru 2016. Although this represents a positive shift in the discussion about football-related brain injuries, Harry's work is far from done. One of his main goals is to help other NFL retirees. Understand that they are not alone in their struggles with mood swings, cognitive impairment, and other symptoms of traumatic brain injury, and that these challenges can become manageable. Another of his major objectives is to educate parents about the neurological consequences of contact sports in general. Brain injuries may happen in a variety of sports, including soccer, lacrosse, hockey, and horseback riding. As Harry says, there needs to be a warning to parents to understand that in signing their kids up to play ice hockey or football or some other sport where their child might sustain neurological damage, that young person may not be the same after they've been concussed. Show what you know. Question number 1. Sternberg believed that intelligence is made up of 3 types of competencies, including A. linguistic, spatial, musical, B. interpersonal, existential, C. analytic, creative, practical, or D. achievement, triarchic, prototype. The answer is analytic, creative, practical. Sternberg believed that intelligence is made up of 3 types of competencies, including analytic, creative, and practical. Question number 2. Define intelligence quotient, IQ. How was the original IQ score derived? The intelligence quotient, IQ, is a score from an intelligence assessment which provides a way to compare levels of intelligence across ages. Originally, an IQ score was derived by dividing mental age by chronological age
and multiplying that number by 100. Modern intelligence tests still assign a numerical score, although they no longer use the actual quotient score. Question number 3. Tests of intelligence are designed to measure, blank, or a person's potential for learning, and other tests are used to assess blank or acquired knowledge. The answer is aptitude and achievement. Tests of intelligence are designed to measure aptitude or a person's potential for learning, and other tests are used to assess achievement or acquired knowledge. Question number 4. An artist friend of yours easily comes up with many unique solutions when trying to solve problems. This blank is one of the defining characteristics of creativity, and it can be measured with the unusual uses test. The answer is originality. An artist friend of yours easily comes up with many unique solutions when trying to solve problems. This originality is one of the defining characteristics of creativity, and it can be measured with the unusual uses test. Chapter 7 Review, Summary of Concepts. LO1 Define cognition and explain how it relates to thinking. Cognition is the mental activity associated with obtaining, converting, and using knowledge. Thinking is a specific type of cognition which involves coming to a decision, reaching a solution, forming a belief, or developing an attitude. Cognition is a broad term that describes mental activity, and thinking is a subset of cognition. LO2 Demonstrate an understanding of concepts and how they are organized. Concepts are mental representations of categories of objects, situations, and ideas that belong together based on their central features, characteristics. Psychologists often use a 3-level hierarchy to categorize objects. At the top of the hierarchy is the subordinate category, which encompasses all objects belonging to a concept. Below is the more specific mid-level category, often used to identify objects. At the bottom of the hierarchy is the subordinate level, or most specific category. LO3 Differentiate between natural concepts and formal concepts. Formal concepts are created through rigid and logical rules or features of a concept. Natural concepts, on the other hand, are acquired through everyday experience. Natural concepts don't have the same types of rigid rules for identification that formal concepts do, and this makes them harder to outline. We organize our worlds with the help of prototypes, the ideal or most representative examples of particular natural concepts. LO4 Explain how trial and error and algorithms can be used to solve problems. Problem solving refers to the variety of approaches used to achieve goals. One approach to problem solving is trial and error, which involves finding a solution through a series of attempts. Algorithms provide a virtually guaranteed solution to a problem by using formulas or sets of rules. Unlike trial and error, algorithms ensure that you will reach a solution if you follow all the steps correctly. LO5 Explain how heuristics help us solve problems. Heuristics are problem-solving approaches that incorporate a rule of thumb or broad application of a strategy. Although they may help us identify and evaluate possible solutions to our problems, these shortcuts do not guarantee solutions. LO6 Describe the process of decision-making and how heuristics can lead us astray. Decision-making generally refers to the cognitive process of choosing among various approaches to reach a goal. Using the availability heuristic, we predict the probability of something happening based on how easily we can recall a similar event from the past. If this recall occurs easily, we judge the event as being more likely to occur. With the representativeness heuristic, we evaluate the degree to which the primary characteristics of a person or situation are similar to our prototype. LO7 define language and give examples of its basic elements. Language is a system for using symbols to think and communicate. These symbols are words, gestures, or sounds, and there are specific rules for putting them together. Phonemes are the basic building blocks of spoken language. Morphemes consist of one or more phonemes and represent the fundamental units of meaning. Grammar refers to the rules associated with word and sentence structures. It includes both syntax and semantics. Syntax is the collection of rules guiding word choice and word order. Semantics refers to rules used to bring meaning to words and sentences. Pragmatics refer to the social rules for using language. LO8 explain how language influences thought. The linguistic relativity hypothesis proposes that language differences lead to disparities in thinking and perception. Most psychologists agree that although language might not determine thinking and perception, it certainly can influence it. LO9 distinguish among various theories of intelligence. Charles Spearman speculated that intelligence consists of general intelligence or G factor, which refers to a singular underlying aptitude or intellectual ability. Howard Gardner suggested we have multiple intelligences, proposing 8 different types of intelligences or frames of mind: linguistic, verbal, logical, mathematical, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, intrapersonal, interpersonal, and naturalist. Robert Sternberg proposed 3 kinds of intelligences. His triarchic theory of intelligence suggests that humans have varying degrees of analytical, creative, and practical abilities. LO10 describe how intelligence is measured and identify the most important characteristics of assessment. Some tests of intelligence aim to measure aptitude or a person's potential for learning. Measures of achievement are designed to assess acquired knowledge, what a person has learned. Psychologists must ensure the accurate assessment of intelligence by determining validity, that is, the degree to which the test measures what it intends to measure. Another important characteristic is reliability, the ability of a test to provide consistent, reproducible results. A reliable test, given repeatedly, will result in similar scores. Another important quality, standardization, is achieved when test developers administer a test to a large sample and then publish the average scores for specified groups. LO11 define creativity and its associated characteristics. Creativity is the ability to construct valuable results in innovative ways. Basic components of creativity include divergent thinking, originality, fluency, and flexibility. Key terms: achievement, algorithm, aptitude, availability, heuristic, cognition, concepts, confirmation bias, convergent thinking, creativity, culture, fair intelligence test, decision-making, divergent thinking, emotional intelligence, formal concepts, functional fixedness, general intelligence, G factor, gifted grammar, heritability, heuristics, hindsight bias, insight, intelligence, intelligence quotient, IQ, language, mental age, MA, morphemes, natural concepts, normal curve, phonemes, pragmatics, problem solving, prototypes, reliability, representativeness, heuristic, semantics,
standardization, syntax, thinking, trial and error, triarchic, theory of intelligence, and validity. Chapter 8, Human Development. The time now is 1:40 a.m. Today is Sunday, June 28th, 2026. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.